Excellent.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'd like to convene a committee of the whole for the village board at 6:02. Tonight we have technically two items, but they're related. So the first is a presentation on the Village Hall and Public Works Facility Conditions Assessment from Fgma Architects. And let's see, I forget the gentleman's name who's going to be presenting to us this evening. Andrew, are you muted?
Andrew Mayo here, and Jason Estes is along with me as well.
Okay, great. Well, welcome this evening. So I'm imagining we're just handing it over to the presenters this evening. And so we're going to, if you could go over the Village Hall conditions assessment, and then we can sort of check in and see where we're at, if there are questions, and then we would move on to the Public Works since they're two distinct facilities.
Sure. So like I said, I'm Andrew Mayo with FGM Architects, project manager for FGM. Along with me is Jason Estes, who is the principal in charge for this particular project. So like you said, this is a presentation for the facility condition assessment for Village Hall as well as Public Works. Just quickly, the agenda, we'll start with project goals. So these first couple of bullets are both facilities, and then we'll get into specific summaries on first Village Hall and then Public Works. So I'll pause after that Village Hall summary. We can have a discussion if there's any questions, then we'll move on to Public Works and then recommendation at the end. So first, starting with some of the project goals, these came out of meetings with staff, getting an understanding of what the village was looking to accomplish with this assessment. So out of those four main goals rose to the top. We wanted to address any inefficiencies in the buildings, provide accurate financial projections, plan for any capital replacements, and then provide a long-term plan for maintaining Village Hall, understanding that there is definitely sentiment in keeping that building as a Village Hall for the long term. Just quickly here, there's a lot of words on the screen. These are how we identified each item in the assessment based on what was asked for in the RFP. So there were 6 different deficiency priority categories. I'm not going to read through all of them. They're also in the report. But basically starting from most immediate down to recommended, and then further on, not something necessarily that needs to be touched, but something we saw during the assessment that may or may not require any immediate maintenance. And then from there, there's also capital requirement classifications. Again, these are right out of the RFP. So there's 5 categories here. A lot of what you'll see in the report kind of bridges between multiple categories. So it was upon us to identify the primary category, if you will. But there are some, particularly when we get into the mechanical systems, that are a maintenance item, but also might fall into energy and sustainability. So being that category 2 is more imperative than category 5, it would wind up in a category 2 or a 3 for the maintenance. So just quickly, overview of Village Hall. Original construction was 1908. You have been operating as a Village Hall in that building since 1916. Most recent major renovation was 1986 with the addition of the rear lobby. And there have been multiple maintenance projects since then. I believe most recently is window replacements, kind of one facade at a time. So in our tour of Village Hall, we spent a good chunk of a day there, going top to bottom and bottom to top. where we looked at everything we could possibly find in Village Hall. So just gonna hit some of the high level items here in this presentation. First, we're gonna talk about building envelope. So that's basically everything that keeps the weather out of the building, whether it's walls, insulation, roof, things like that, windows. So what we found there are some pretty substantial issues with the building envelope, particularly on the lower level. There have been some maintenance projects to try and mitigate some of the issue, but haven't quite gotten to where we need to get to keep water out in particular. So what you're seeing in front of you is at the bottom photograph of the foundation wall coming out of the earth there has a parge coat over it that is cracking because water is getting in behind it. And as you can see on the interior, that water is coming all the way through the wall, causing some efflorescence and spalling on the brick. You can see that in all three of these pictures at the top. In addition, you'll see while the windows have been maintained, some of the lower level doorways have not, causing some issues with weather getting in and decreased efficiency as far as the amount of energy costs you're seeing. So these are some building envelope issues that we saw that we felt like should be identified and addressed as part of this assessment. Next are the mechanical systems. So the
Excuse me, Seth. I was thinking hold questions until the end.
The end of the whole thing.
No, end of Village Hall. Thanks.
if you want, I'm perfectly fine if you want to jump in, if there's anything in particular you want to address in the previous slide. It's up to you though.
If we can try taking, we'll just try taking them all at the end
Sure.
from the Village Hall.
Okay.
There may be similar ones.
So next, jumping into mechanical systems, what we found overall is the mechanical systems in this building, while operational, have definitely outlived their useful life, not nearly as efficient as modern systems. There's some issues with some of the controls in the building where we were unable to determine whether some of the pneumatic controls were even working. Pneumatic controls are older control system that took care of identifying what the temperature in the room was and relaying that back to the system, whether to kick it on or off. More modern system would be a digital control system, even with taking it one step further into building automation system where your maintenance staff would actually be able to see that on their own laptops and kind of do diagnostics on the fly. So that's the systems that we're designing into modern buildings now, even into some of the retrofits that we're doing with taking care of some of what you're seeing on the screen here with your aging systems that are requiring more maintenance and are less efficient than even they were when they were first installed, let alone compared to some modern systems. Next piece would be accessibility and ADA. While these mostly fall into that grandfathered category, we just wanted to identify them as part of the study to make you aware of some of the issues with the building. There is an accessible entrance with that addition, the 1986 addition in the back. You have an elevator, you have an accessible stair. So what you see here is that front entry stair is not accessible and probably not the best for even someone just walking up and down it due to its steep slope there. Some of the other things were some of the bathrooms, which really there's a technical infeasibility in trying to retrofit the existing bathrooms to be handicap accessible. There's really no easy way to do it. It would require some pretty invasive renovation in order to get accessible bathrooms in this building. And then some smaller things such as what you're seeing here. The Americans with Disabilities Act guidelines specifically dictate that doorknobs are not permissible because it's difficult for someone with a handicap to grasp those. So typically we're seeing levers rather than knobs. But again, these are falling into that grandfathered category, just something we wanted to make you aware of. So do you want me to pause here or after the costs?
After the costs, please.
Okay. So based on what we found, like I said, we identified the different priority categories, and within those priority categories, the deficiency category as well. So what you're seeing right now is the costs lumped into those priority categories, because this will help you to build your capital improvement budget going forward. We've kind of put some timeline to each of these. So priority 1 is that immediate to 2-year time frame. Priority 2 is a 3 to 5 year. Necessary but not yet critical is 6 to 8, and then the last 3 don't necessarily have a timeline to them, but depending on what you want to do with the building, some of these may want to be addressed or should be addressed depending on what they are. So you can see on the last piece here, each of those categories, each of the priority categories, associated budget based on, in the report, in the appendix, you see a long list of deficiency items line by line. So this is just an aggregate of all of those. And the grand total being just over $767,000. With that, as part of this process, we did do cost estimating with our contract partner, who was a consultant of ours, and those numbers are from January of this year. Unfortunately, between January and now, costs have risen between 15 and 20%. So in 6 months, that's a pretty substantial rise. I think we've all heard the stuff on the news. Typically, in any given pre-pandemic year, we were 3.5 to 4% increase per year, not per 6 months. And then during the pandemic, we bumped that up to anywhere between 7.5 and 10%. Coming out of the pandemic, it's more like anywhere between 15 and 25% per year. As you can see, this year in particular has been outrageous as far as construction costs. So once we finalize this report, we can build in that additional 20%. However, we didn't necessarily want to throw escalation numbers into the report, not knowing when they'll be implemented. So it'd really be difficult to make an assessment as far as how much escalation to build into each of these. So with that, any questions on Village Hall?
Trustee Stokebrand?
Do you mind going back to the slide that shows the lower level? I've never been, maybe we should do tours. I've never been to the lower level.
I highly recommend anytime you're looking at facilities like this, that the elected officials do tour the buildings and do it with your maintenance staff in particular, because they're the ones who are keeping these buildings running for you, and they're the ones who know where all the problem spots lie. So I would definitely recommend touring your facilities.
I'm just wondering, for perspective and context, can you tell me, are all those windows the same? Are we talking one, is the whole basement like that, or is it one wall?
It's mostly on the west side of the building, spilling a little bit into the north and south walls as well. So this is just a few examples, but there are definitely more than just these 3 issues that you're seeing.
Okay, and is the Historical Society has moved all their stuff up or out? Is that?
It's still in there, but not in that part. I think they've they've recovered from flooding. I was in there with the fountain dedication and it was dry that day.
Okay. And so I'm guessing in your detailed report, it shows for each color bar, what you consider the top level, in each.
Yeah, so in that appendix, you'll see the priorities 1 through 5, or 1 through 6. And that determines what category each of those line items fall into. And then you take the cost for each of those, and that's where you get that aggregate summary cost.
And so when you say that it's technically not feasible to get accessible bathrooms,
So I'll go to that one. The ADA guideline terminology is technically infeasible. That is to say that it would take major renovation of the building in order to get the accessibility guideline in place, whether it's bathrooms or staircase or what have you. However, there are certain thresholds that once you hit a threshold as far as area of the building that you're renovating or dollars that you're putting into the building during a renovation, that would then trigger you to be required to meet that guideline, whether the technical infeasibility is there or not.
but you mentioned the word grandfathered, so
Until you hit one of those thresholds. So if you were to do a major renovation of this building, you would have to have all the accessibility features in the building at the end of the day.
but like having an elevator at the back, does that preclude you from having to renovate your front? I mean, because
Yeah, so your historic front would not necessarily have to be renovated. We just pointed it out as part of this study to say, this isn't something we would see in a modern building. However, we understand that this is a historic building, it's grandfathered in. So that, while grandfathered is not a technical term in the code, that is not something that you would have to address because you have addressed it on the backside of the building. So you're able to get to every floor of the building from that back entrance.
right. And so the things you mentioned about no doorknobs, obviously we've met the code with the handles, the pull levers on the sinks, right? I mean,
Yes, so the issue with the sink here would be the knee space below it. In particular, these 2 sinks that you're seeing here, they need to be insulated, the plumbing below the sink that you're seeing there, because there's the potential for someone to have their legs or knees underneath that space and scald themselves on the hot water.
if you're in a wheelchair, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Arndorfer.
What are the main drivers for the cost inflation we're seeing? I mean, is it materials, labor, all the above? or-
All of the above, yeah. Supply chain, materials, labor, it's inflation, it's everything all hitting at the same time.
Thank you.
Other technical questions? I have a question. With the essential improvements immediate to 2 years, what are the itemized aspects of that?
Specifically what's in the report. I don't have the report up right now because I've got the slide.
Right, I
Presentation
guess I
here?
didn't
You want
see
me to
that
show
we
you real
got
quick?
the report. Did we get the report?
I have. So if you scroll down to the next page on the agenda, it's no, like you go past that one. So go past the black page and go to the next one. And in that, scroll down to this. Scroll down
Oh,
to-
thank you. So the memo for the next item on the agenda.
The document
Yep,
itself was
number
so
1
big.
Fgma
Yep.
study. So
Okay,
that's where all the itemized for everything.
okay, thank you. I can. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, my bad.
That's fine.
Okay, so no other technical questions or clarification from the board members? Okay, then we can proceed on to the presentation regarding Public Works, and then we'll come back for staff direction discussion on the next agenda item.
Okay. With that, so Public Works is the Public Works campus is broken up into 5 main buildings, 2 of which are fully conditioned buildings, if you will, with complete heating systems. So the shop and office building is the one you're looking at currently. Beyond that is a vehicle storage garage, and then there are 3 cold storage buildings. There's the annex, the warehouse, and the salt shed, all of which are used for various cold storage. However, there is some vehicle storage happening in cold storage that ideally Public Works would like to see in more of a vehicle garage scenario where there's at least temperate air. So again, here, we're going to just high level talk about some of the primary deficiencies that we found during our tour. One of the biggest things that stood out to us that isn't necessarily a building condition, so doesn't necessarily fall into facility condition assessment. However, we felt like it would be important to talk about is the operational inefficiency of the current buildings and the campus, how it's laid out, ingress and egress to the buildings, as well as operational inefficiencies within the building. So this one in particular, we're talking about some of the storage and circulation of materials and equipment. What you're seeing here is some of the tool storage, just kind of the nice thing about Public Works, and they're their own worst enemy in talking about facility because they make do as best as anybody can. So they're very creative when trying to find solutions to their problems. As you can see in the left here, that it's just kind of a homemade storage solution for some of their tools. They do have quite a bit of issue trying to maintain their equipment in their existing garage just because of where all the tools have to be kept versus where some of the lifts are, and some of the lifts are actually out of commission. So there's a lot of difficulty there. And then last on the right here, you see the storage garage, the vehicle storage garage, and what they're having to do in order to access certain pieces of equipment because they're so shoehorned into these buildings is they have to do a constant shuffle of their equipment in order to get the things that they need to do the job that they're doing on any given day. So they're able to get everything under cover and safe from the elements. However, when they need to use that equipment, they need to then pull everything out and do the whole jigsaw puzzle. Here's some pictures of the maintenance shop. You can see here some of the issues. Again, if none of you have been to the building, I recommend touring these facilities as well. Again, they're making do with what they have. They're keeping the equipment running. However, definitely not a modern purpose-built DPW maintenance garage. Another big item we saw, and we were actually fortunate enough to be there during the lunch hour. So this, I'm going to talk about site circulation as far as the inefficiency there. On the right, what you see is the site highlighted in red here, Milwaukee River to the west, the houses to the east with this small access drive off the street to get into a very long and narrow site. What we saw as the crew was coming back into service from their lunch breaks is a lot of these vehicles were being shuffled around, and it just so happened that the 18-wheeler was coming to do the dumpster pickup at the same time. So there was a lot of shuffling back and forth and a lot of places for things to potentially go wrong if everybody wasn't paying attention to what they were doing. So again, just a lot of operational inefficiency with the site. Again, they've made do with what they have But there's a lot of potential for things to happen in this current site situation. Some of the material storage issues, again, making do with what they have. So the material storage bins currently are right up against the vehicle garage, not exactly the best place to be storing materials up against a wall that wasn't meant to have topsoil and gravel stored up against it. You're decreasing the lifespan of those bricks that are already the cream city colored brick. That's already a very soft porous brick. So you're decreasing that lifespan even further by storing materials here, as well as you can see it becomes difficult at times for them to access these bins with the overhead here. So it looks like there have been times where equipment has actually run into the fascia of the roof above. What you see in the right-hand side here on the top, again, making do with what they have, finding any place on the site that they can store pallets of materials. These pallets probably should be undercover in a cold storage situation somewhere, but again, there's no room for them. And at the bottom here, just storing some concrete drainage culverts wherever they can on site, as opposed to having a specific location for each of these pieces to make sure they have maintain access all around all of the buildings. Mechanical systems in this building, we saw very similar issues to Village Hall. Very inefficient systems that have well outlived their useful life. In some scenarios, what we're showing here in the center picture is this whole space used to be garage vehicle space. At one point, this wall to the left was installed, but there was no thought given to the mechanical systems of that space. So some of these office spaces to the left are commingled with some of the diesel exhaust fumes that are still in the garage space. So not the best scenario, not something we would design in a modern facility. So again, having to make do with an antiquated facility that was probably modern for its time when they were bringing trash into the incinerator by a horse and buggy. Perfectly built for that, but equipment has gotten a lot larger and more sophisticated, and the building is just to the point where it can't necessarily keep up. Some of the other deficiencies we noticed, some of the building envelope and structural systems. The two that you're seeing on the left here are below the incinerator access ramps. So the old incinerator, I'll go back a couple of pictures, that vertical smokestack comes off of the incinerator, and the building right next to it, which is now the locker room and break room on the upper level and some storage and shop space on the lower level. That's where we are with this structural deficiency, where because of the porous nature of the concrete and the lack of adequate draining around these areas, even though it is a ramp, we're seeing some water infiltration and some spalling of the concrete, leaving exposed rebar to rust, which will lead to eventual failure of those ramps. And on the right-hand side here, we're seeing a lot of the exterior building envelope, cracking, chipping, spalling, you name it, and it's happening to the brick and concrete and stucco systems around these buildings. Another big thing we noted, and we also had some conversations with staff while we were there, the retaining wall to the east of the site that basically separates the residential from the public works site. This retaining wall over the years has been built on top of itself and is bowing and a fair amount of places. As you can see on the left here, some of this is even, debris and yard waste that have just been pushed up against the fence as well as the retaining wall, leading to potential premature failure of this wall. It seems like there's discussions about how to address it, but there's no ownership between the residential and the village. So it's a potential issue that doesn't necessarily have any great solution to it other than having to replace that wall. And here we jump into the capital costs. What you'll see here is the number is larger. Obviously, there are more buildings and a larger site to address, but it is also front-loaded, as in within the next 5 years, there's a substantial amount of this 1.5 million that would have to be spent in order to maintain public works in its existing facility. Given that there's the potential for finding a new home for public works, and you probably still have some of these numbers there just to limp along in the existing facility until something new were either built or found for public works so they could move out of this existing facility. Again, these numbers are about 20% off, given that they were done in January of 22 versus now. So again, that's 6 months, 20%, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing. Would you like me to pause here again for questions, and then we'll go into the final few slides?
Yes, please. Questions?
So I guess it looks like if you spent $1 million, you could limp along for 8 more years. Is that what you're?
Yeah, and what this doesn't address is any of those operational efficiencies that I touched on first. And those are a little more difficult to actually assign costs to, because really what you're looking at is lost hours of productivity from staff due to having to shuffle equipment around and deal with an existing building that doesn't really serve their needs. So that one's hard to quantify, and there's no fix to that in this facility.
So you mentioned the possibility of another site. So I guess one of the decision points is the time that we spend putting vehicles in the barns with the barn boss. If you compare that to the time spent driving to Shorewood with the equipment, how do you figure out what's better? Where's
So that would be a whole other study in itself, but it would really come down to identifying a select group of sites that are actually potentially viable sites, determining where they are in the village, where most of the service is happening, whether it's trash pickup, plowing, etc., and then getting kind of an average drive time per day or per mile or whatever the case may be, and then weighing that versus lost productivity.
And obviously the wild card we have right now is fuel costs, right?
Yeah.
If you have to drive 2 miles to get to the village to do public works, and I don't know what diesel fuel is, but if gasoline is, they're mostly diesel, right? If gas is $5 a gallon versus what was it before, 3 something. So
Yeah,
that's-
or is it even more? Is it $10 a gallon a couple of years from now? There's really no way to know that.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? Okay, let's take the next few slides.
All right. So we touched on this already. Basically, the recommendations of our study, we knew going into this based on our goals coming from staff that Village Hall, you want to stay in there long-term. We understood that. So we approached this study with that in mind, and gave you kind of a good roadmap for those capital maintenance costs over the next 8 years. So really, the recommendation would be to start implementing some of those capital improvements, whether it's addressing the building envelope or the mechanical system, making sure you're prioritizing those the right way. And then Public Works is kind of the opposite. So we're seeing significant dollars that you'd have to build into your capital budgets to address some of the issues at Public Works. But even once addressing all of the facility issues, you're still not necessarily addressing any of the operational or site safety issues. So our recommendation would be not necessarily throwing good money after bad. Put the Band-Aids onto the building that you need to put on, but plan for a new facility in the next 3 to 4 years. Where that happens is still yet to be determined, given that there aren't many good sites in the village that could house a public works department of your size.
So are you saying, could the new site be the current site? I mean, can we build a new facility on the current site?
Anything can be done. I don't think I'd necessarily recommend that, given how narrow the site is and how large the equipment is. Again, going back to the anecdotal story of us standing in that parking lot right after the lunch hour and having that 18-wheeler come in and everybody trying to jockey their equipment around, it gets really crowded really quickly. And that doesn't even account for any residents coming to drop off yard waste, trash, or, anytime you're doing electronics recycling or anything like that. So it would be difficult to address your needs on this site, I believe. Can it be done? Maybe, but it would take some planning. And the other issue then is, where does Public Works go in the meantime?
Right. And I guess it's sort of to the point too, where obviously we're not using the incinerator anymore, right? So that's one way operations at the Public Works Department has changed over time. And so it would appear that one of the decisions we need to make is, what operations do we continue to do?
Correct.
Like if we get rid of the transfer station, that would open up space and it would reduce a lot of traffic.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so that's again, a decision that has to be made by the village. I know those tend to be very contentious decisions. I've seen it in my own community with trash pickup, not necessarily by the village or not, but you'll definitely get some opinions out there. So that's one way, but also you talk about some of the changes that have happened with Public Works. The equipment's gotten larger, and that's just a fact of the business that they're in. The larger equipment allows them to do more work, but requires a more modern facility to house it and to maintain it.
Any other questions? I'm just checking my notes because I made some, but I think they were all answered. Okay, so at this point, I think what we plan to do is to wrap up. There's no action. We're just receiving this presentation. And then under the next agenda item, we'll have a discussion to direct staff to bring back, to take direction on these recommendations that we've received. Is that correct? All right. Thank you very much, Andrew, and your colleague.
All right, thank you. Let me know if any questions come up, and we're happy to work with you and answer anything that you might need.
Okay. Any final comments by Chair of Public Works?
I just want to thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough, and I appreciate all the work that you guys have put into this. So thanks.
Thank you.
I do have one question of these types of, I imagine you've seen a lot of public works yards. Is ours pretty typical for what's out there?
I can answer that one. So I'm usually dealing with public works facilities. Traditionally, I would say that you are very representative in the fact that you are using old buildings that have been handed down from previous uses at a different time period, which is very typical. They're probably not efficient for the equipment, as Andrew stated. So that's very typical. If you were utilizing this site today, clean slate, you could probably utilize an entire single structure where it's more of a drive-through facility that would probably solve most of your needs. But to do so right now would be a very hard thing to do while maintaining operations. But it's maintained, they take care of everything. They do not make a lot of waves. That is very typical of what public works is, and they take pride in what they do. So I think that they are very typical. Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Kudo?
Are there any other local public works facilities that you would recommend we take a look at or tour? I mean, I've been fortunate enough to tour our facility, but I have no knowledge about, comparable size municipalities or the services they offer, anything like that. So is there anything, doesn't even necessarily need to be close by, that I or we can take a look at to have a better understanding of some of the
I'd have to give that some thought. I think the one thing you hit on was the size of the municipality, but also the services you're providing. There are a lot of municipalities that have gotten out of the trash business and have contracted that out. So you are unique there. But I could give that some thought and come up with some examples for you on that one.
I don't want to speak for everyone, but I would appreciate being able to take a look
Mhm.
at some options.
Agree. Yeah, thank you. All right, great. Let's wrap up and we will wrap up this agenda item and we will take item number 2.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So item 2 is provide direction on facility condition assessment report recommendations. So I'll hand this over to the village manager. And we are staying, just to keep in mind, tonight we're staying very high level. And to just give that next bit of direction that can move us down the road. So we'll probably take Village Hall first and then conclude and take Public Works.
So with regards to the Village Hall, it's our intention to review those elements that are identified in the next couple of years and provide recommendations through the annual budget cycle based upon the priority improvements that were identified within the report. So staff's ready to do that and then come back with any feedback. You'll recall that the priorities were out. Most of them were priority 2. So we'll come back and give some thought to that and provide you with an update for that, or you will see it reflected within capital requests for 2023. So I don't need any further direction on that unless that's a pretty routine item review that our staff would do with a report such as this. Moving on, the direction that I would like from the board tonight so that I can proceed in a direction that we're comfortable with is hearing from the board if you're in agreement with the Fgma recommendation to invest minimally in the current facility and develop a new long-term solution for the facility. So that's, I guess, checkpoint 1, because then that will direct me in terms of how to proceed and prepare for your next meeting and kind of framework what that looks like. So perhaps we want to pause here and then maybe get comments from board members. And I'm hoping that we'll come to some collective conclusions so that I can do my best to proceed with next steps.
And how I was thinking about this is, that I kind of would like to take a little bit of a temperature read of the room, because if we're all in agreement, then, we can, of course, discuss and give direction, but we kind of know that we're all, that there's a consensus of one over the other. If we know we're not there yet, then we know how to proceed with discussion. So with that in mind, the recommendation from Fgma was really to find a new site for Public Works. So kind of starting there with the understanding that that's the recommendation that's coming out of this assessment. There is also the acknowledgement of the fees, that technically it's possible to start fresh on that site. And then it's possible to invest in what's necessary to keep it running. And that would be kind of the do nothing scenario. But I'd like to check in on the recommendation that came from the facilities assessment, since that's just what we were talking about. So is anybody at that place? Yes.
I just ask a question,
Yeah.
staff. Just trying to, I know you've all been looking at this for a little bit of time now. I mean, do you have any sense or context you can provide us on what site availability is like, or iterations would be if, we were to pursue that path in terms of distance, in terms, what are some of the things we'd have to think about in terms of cost, et cetera?
If that were a route you'd want to pursue, then we would come back to you and say, okay, here's how we'd recommend to proceed. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. Here's what we need to decide first in order to take those next steps.
So that's what I meant by being high
Got
level.
it.
Like,
Okay.
if based on the recommendation at a very high level, what do you think is the best direction to give staff to come back with that level of information that we would need to just take baby steps towards this? And at any point, until you approve a cost or sign, they might come back with information that says like, nope, that isn't the way we want to go. We need to go to another one. So very high level tonight. Do you support the recommendation from the assessment? Do you support rebuilding on the current site? Do you want to see us go forward with the maintenance, the critical maintenance, and do nothing? So, I mean, that's not official. I guess then there could be like, don't invest in it at all, but so just a temperature read of the room. Is there anybody that's comfortable with giving direction at this point with the recommendation from Fgma? I am. Okay, let's open it up to discussion. And let's go around once and see where we're at. And if Arthur, you want to start as chair and also?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think after, touring the facilities, speaking to not only Leanne, but also a lot of the people that work there, this site is incredibly inefficient. The space, it's just not meant for a modern DPW. With that said, looking into all the options, if we are able to find a space that's close enough by where we can create a modern facility, I think that modern facility in the long run has the opportunity to save us a lot more money. But outside of that, we'll be able to retain staff and even hire new staff. We've lost staff because of the inefficiencies of this particular space as it is right now. So we're losing good people. It's hard to retain people, and it's hard to hire new people because of our layout, because of how antiquated this space is. Looking at a totally different picture, if we leave this space now opens up for a huge potential. There could be opportunities for affordable housing. There could be so many more opportunities on this space right now. So kind of looking at a holistic picture, if we invest good money on top of bad right now, it's one of these things that I always see happening in this village is, we're making these decisions for 2-3 years down the road. We want to save a couple bucks here and there, but saving that money here and there costs us millions of dollars 10 years down the road. And I think that's what's happening right here is we're now faced with these decisions that were made 10 years ago saying, you know, we can't spend this money. We can't do this now. We can't do this now. And if we would have done it earlier, we would have saved so much more money and we would have been in a different place. And now we're confronted with that again. Unfortunately, we only have 3-year terms. So I think there's a lot of people that have a hard time making these tough decisions because, you know, they don't want it to fall on their backs. But, you know, this is imperative if we want to keep DPW alive in our village. And I think that's why the majority of people live in Shorewood is because of just the high standards that our DPW has, you know, and so I'm 100% in favor of exploring what another site would look like. I think we owe it to Leanne, we owe it to our DPW, we owe it to the residents to see what that picture looks like. Once we get that information, then we can all make a decision on if that's the right course for us, if the costs line up. But that's, you know, I'm 100% in favor of going in that direction.
Do you want to go around, or is there somebody who would like to speak next?
No, I would generally agree with Arthur. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, the current site, I, you know, hypothetically would be supportive of, you know, I would be supportive of exploring the idea, finding a new. We don't know what we.
Mhm.
I guess we're flexible on that, you know, recognizing we had flexible and just on that point. I mean, I think we have to look.
Right. So really the direction is get more information around offsite because it wouldn't, obviously there are a lot of unknowns. So Trustee Stokran, would you like to go next, or is there someone else?
I would be open to looking at another site, but I would also want to do what Jim said, which I think is get some more information about possibly staying where we are. And I'd like to see a cost benefit. I would like to see both. I want to see how much would we have to downsize our operations to stay. You know, if the DPW workers don't feel valued now, how are they going to feel when we're like, oh, go on to River West? I mean, you know, I think that's an issue. We love you a lot and we want you to pick up our garbage, but can you do it from another municipality? I'm also concerned about, you know, one of the 2020 study talks about alternative service delivery. And I want to know where we are on those list of items. Have we done them? You know, we talk about the transfer station so much. Where's the study that shows where we can put this besides our village? And that's what I want to know. This has been, you know, talked about. Well, you know better than I do because you've been on the board a long time. So I want to know where we are with alternate service delivery. How much have we investigated downsizing what we do, looking at alternatives for delivery to stay on this site and make it work. It's hard to look at abandoning that site after you look and see what they did with this fire station. I mean, what if you kept the facade and you built a 2-story DPW office? I don't know. You built parking structures with 2 levels. I would want to exhaust possibilities for not staying on that site, but I'd be open to moving. But I want to know first where we are with the 2020 survey. One of the things it talked about was developing workload and performance data metrics and reporting these regularly to the village board. I don't know if we had those. I don't know. Not to my knowledge. I'm not on DPW though. So, or Public Works Committee, maybe you've gotten these and I don't know. But I think you can't talk about the site until you talk about the operations. And you can say, oh, we've talked about operations before, but not this group. You know, you did, because you were on for 6 years. So, you know, but we have not had the operations discussion with this group of people. And I have no idea about what to do with the facility until I know where we're going with operations. I would love to see us not pick up as much garbage because we have instituted some sort of a policy to encourage, the refuse utility. Director Emmanuelson has talked about. I think that's a good idea where the more garbage you produce, the more you pay. But that's, my perspective.
Mhm. Is that your question about the where are we with the 2020 survey? Would you like that answered now, or was it more rhetorical?
Whenever.
Is that something that you can comment on now? Do you have to come to the microphone? Okay, so no problem.
So we did this on. We have taken a number of the recommendations that were specifically outlined in the 2020 study. One of those was data metrics and reporting, and that went to the Public Works Committee. I don't recall the exact date, but we outlined to the committee, which at that time was chaired by Trustee Warren, a number of different data delivery alternatives and reporting frequencies and requirements. And at that time, the Public Works Committee did not request any change from what and how frequently things are currently being reported.
So if these are supposed to be regularly reported, how often would we get them? And I'm just looking for background. It says reported regular, and I'm guessing that that's to sort of monitor where we want to go with operations. I don't know. I think we got this report right when COVID hit.
I would have to check my notes to verify, but the general direction and my general recollection of that was that the committee at that time didn't require, desire any more frequent reporting than the annual reports that we currently. And the sustainability scorecard that Conservation Committee distributes quarterly.
So the sustainability scorecard, is that on the website?
I would
goes-
defer to the village manager's staff.
Yeah, the Conservation Committee, they receive the data and then they process it, but I'm not sure where they've been keeping the scorecard.
I can look at that.
In the future, just as an aside, it'd be great to have it on consent agenda or something. And then the discussion of operations and service level. I know that we did a pretty extensive look at that when we negotiated the last waste management contract and looked at everything from automation to outsourcing to having a kind of like reverse recycle versus refuse collection. And I know that I'm the only one on the board who was there, and that doesn't take the place of all of us doing that together, because I think that is, really important. And I remember that it came back pretty conclusively that it was not a very competitive bid to, there's not a lot of competition in this field for contracting for refuse collection. So is that the last time that we kind of did a really kind of more thorough look at how we do things? Because we really looked at that. We really anticipated as a board that we were going to find some significant cost savings, and we didn't. So that's the last time we looked at it, right?
That's correct. Not approximately 5 years ago,
Okay.
after much discussion and many variations, the board approved and issued an RFP for collection services. You're also correct in that the field of competition was limited at that time. Today, there is no field of competition.
Okay. It is
It's waste
sole-
management.
Mhm.
That
They're
is
the only,
game in Milwaukee County for curbside contracted refuse. They do our recycling curbside, which at the time, and Mark was involved in some pretty extensive financial reviews, cost benefit analysis, et cetera. And we determined that not only could we perform the service for less money, but I will say with no hesitation that we can outperform waste management with very little effort.
Mhm.
And in fact, we pride ourselves on particularly the refuse service that we provide. It's the first thing that we do on a daily basis, the first thing we assign staff to. It's the thing we do every day. And we do it better than any contractor could. So that's a tough nut to crack because it's really the service that most people see, touch, and feel on a daily basis. I mean, they get water and stuff too, but they typically don't think about that
Right.
nearly as much as they do their garbage. So
And that as it came up in the assessment presentation, that takes up the most space and on a DPW site,
it
that
does-
service.
Yes, it definitely does. And one thing you'll probably remember, but what may be new information to the rest of the board members is we also outlined extensive scenarios related to yard waste, leaf collection, et cetera. And as it turned out, the level of service that we provide to this community, there was no private contractor that was willing to even entertain a bid.
Mhm.
So the reality is we could get out of the refuse collection service. We cannot get out of the yard waste service at the current level of service.
Mhm.
And so for that reason, we would still require a transfer station to process that material.
I'll say that again. We can't get out of the refuse business without getting out of,
We could get out of the refuse collection business.
okay.
We could contract with Waste Management or say, in X number of years, there's another provider in town. But at the time that we did the RFP for the collection services, we outlined several different scenarios related to bagged or curbside yard waste collection, brush collection, and bulk leaf collection. And we did not have a single contractor provide a bid for any of those services.
Okay, so if you're doing garbage, you have to also do leaves.
No. But what I'm saying is you can get out of the garbage business. You cannot get out of the recycling or the refuse. Sorry. We can get out
Yard
of the
waste.
refuse business. We cannot get out of the yard waste business. If we are collecting leaves, brush, or yard waste, we need a transfer station.
We can't take it to Whitefish Bay if they have a
No,
transfer station.
Well, we need a transfer station. Right now, we only have
Somewhere.
access to one. There's no transfer station in Whitefish Bay.
Because we share it.
Correct.
So what if we ask Whitefish Bay to take the transfer station because they have a bigger facility?
That
Mhm.
becomes a
That's a
very
good
different
question.
conversation.
It's a significant part of the operation.
Right,
I mean,
but-
I don't know how
right.
you have the
But
discussion.
that's a
without-
partnership,
Yeah.
right? So you can ask
We
So-
negotiate.
for that.
Could Milwaukee? Like if, my,
It-
my question would be, if we continue collection, could we bring it to wherever, whatever Milwaukee's site is? And,
That would be
know.
a similar negotiated
Okay.
conversation than you would have
but
with,
Milwaukee does that though, right? Still, like I
yes,
know
but they don't
Whitefish Bay
provide that
doesn't.
service to other municipalities.
Okay.
So what I'm gathering is that there is interest and around a service conversation. And just so that we all have the same information.
Yeah, and I think about collaboration. I mean, all these studies say collaborate with your neighbors,
Mhm.
and that's when you go to the Wisconsin League of Municipalities, that's what they preach at almost every session you go to is work with your neighbors.
Mhm.
And so I guess if we have a track record of trying to do that, and I think it's really, it's got to be some negotiations.
Mhm.
I don't know who does that for us at that level for these operations.
Mhm.
Attorneys?
I think, yeah, I mean, staff has negotiated in the past, so. But before we get too far more into that, I mean, I think what we should take from this is that a conversation about service delivery and operations is not so much operations, but services and how much space they take and what are alternatives and things like that is going to be part of this discussion. Trustee Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, my main takeaway at this point would be basically if we can maintain as much control over the operations as we currently have, you know, that would be my preferred option. If that means that we have to move the whole site, that's, you know, that's what we have to do. That's okay. I like, you know, if we could do a hybrid approach of maybe maintaining, you know, refuse collection, yard waste collection ourselves with our staff, and find a place in Milwaukee who would take it, you know, something like that. I'd be okay with looking at that. I think specifically Milwaukee, because I know, like you said, Whitefish Bay doesn't really do that. And I'm sure Milwaukee does. And I'm sure they'd take our money if we wanted to give it to them. So, you know, I think that's an option. My only concern really with moving the site is if we move it to another area, you know, I'd be cautious about, are we just bringing that to another neighborhood that we care less about than our own, that we feel like they can have our trash placed in their neighborhood and not ours? So I'd want to be careful with that. So yeah, I think a little more information on collaboration would be great. And then we can kind of proceed from there.
Thank you. Trustee Kudo.
I'm kind of a hybrid of everybody, really. I mean, all of you have good points. There are major deficiencies at our current location. With that said, you know, I don't feel like I am any closer to the ground than a 50,000 foot view of this problem. You know, I was fortunate enough to tour the facility. I'm fortunate enough to have been around Shorewood for a very long time. I have a good idea of the services and everything that's provided. But I don't know what other yards look like. I don't know what service levels are required or requested from the villagers. I don't know what it would look like to move to a different municipality, the costs associated with that. Like there are so many variables that exist in what I would argue is one of, if not the most important department we have in the village. You know, I want options, and I don't know if that's an a la carte type of thing or if it's an all or nothing type of entree I have to go after to go into Arthur's world. But like, I want options. You know, I want a big buffet. I want to know what things are going to cost. I want to know what effects, if any, it's going to have on villagers and on staff. And specifically the workers that are out there every day. And then I want to be able to make an educated decision. And so if that means that we go down and we explore a little bit further, moving the facility or redoing the facility or getting rid of the transfer station or changing services, I want to look at all of it. And right now I feel like I'm at 50,000 feet. And, you know, there's some folks that are lower than I am, some folks that are maybe higher than I am, whatever. Just bring me some stuff to look at is really would be my request. Because you know, what I know now is that it doesn't work like it should. And what I know now is we could put 1.5 million or whatever the final number was into this. It just seems that for the short term, we don't have many options for the first 3 years, you know, until 2026, 2025. We have to spend money to stop water from going into the basement facility, to stop, you know, problems over at DPW that could be hazardous to someone's health. So like those things I think we need to address. And I don't have a problem doing that. But if it gets past 3 years, I want to make some long-term decisions. And I would also be interested in, to the best of our ability, what these options mean for taxpayers and ratepayers in the village, right? Because we're asking them to pay for lead laterals, for other, you know, all these other services, these things that are coming up, these water utilities. And so if this means it's an extra $10 on their taxes, that's an entirely different story to me than an extra $500, an extra $1,000. So I want all of that information so that when I inevitably vote on something, I inevitably get, you know, half the population mad at me. I want to at least explain to them why they're mad at me. So, but that's where I'm at. I need a lot more information before I would make any sort of decision. And I'm happy to entertain, you know, moving it, keeping it here, whatever, just give me something to look at.
Just to touch on your point about the tour, I forgot to mention this. I was offered a tour of Brown Deere's new facility from an alderperson there, so I'll reach out to that person and
Yeah, I
see
mean,
if,
like,
you know,
I'd be happy to actually schedule that for you. I
Oh.
didn't want to mention it on when FGMA was on the call because I didn't design that facility, so I just,
Oh.
I'm sure they'll come back.
I'm
with a
sure it's inferior,
recommendation.
right.
But that is the newest one in our area. They do not do trash collection
okay.
or have a transportation, but I think it'd be a good idea for you guys to go tour that. So I'm happy to schedule that.
Yeah, but like, I mean, Brown Deer, Whitefish Bay, Bucks Point, Glendale, I mean, they're all very close. They all obviously have different levels of service. They all have buildings who I imagine are a lot younger than our building. Let's take a look, let's just take a day or take a half day and go look around and then see what services they provide and what things that they need in order to provide that service. Like I would have never in a million years thought that refuse, like yard waste, would have required a transfer station. It just wasn't in my mind. It's like, let's get rid of trash, open up all this area, and then Leanne can do different stuff with it.
Can you explain why you need a transfer station just because you do yard waste? I don't understand. Like, why wouldn't you just?
Well, that's where I'm at. I'm done now. Thank you, Trustee Sokobrand.
So the transfer station is a facility that's comprised of a couple different elements. You have a compactor, which the material is offloaded from the trucks into the compactor, and the compactor compacts to a degree the material and moves it into a tractor trailer.
So, right, are we talking garbage or
Either.
yard waste?
It's the same. They're set up exactly the same, but
But they don't go together, do they?
they do not go together. We have two compactors.
Okay.
But the transfer station is sort of our fancy language for two compactors and the associated facility and equipment that go with it. So you need a transfer station to move material out of the trucks into a different truck that it can be hauled off site. If you don't have a transfer station, the alternative is when your truck is full, you drive it to a compost facility or a landfill
Or another
transfer station.
What is the closest municipality with transfer station?
Or I guess a landfill. Anybody can take it.
I believe we have the only transfer station in the North Shore.
So why are
Milwaukee-
we, so it makes you wonder why, if they're not doing it anymore, why are we doing it? Because they all use,
Because they, with the exception of Fox Point, they can't.
That'd be the only.
Well,
out there.
yeah, it's
right?
waste management now, but probably at the time of the contract.
so we could do the same thing. Right?
But again, you can contract your garbage collection. You will still need a transfer station to process your yard waste. Unless you are going to drive it to Menominee Falls every time you fill up the truck.
But so what does Whitefish Bay do with their, well, they bring theirs
They
here.
bring it to our transfer
But
station.
what does Bayside or Fox Point do with their yard waste? They don't pick it up?
They do pick it up. I believe Bayside processes some of theirs on site. The other, so Bayside, Fox Point have yards that are significantly larger than ours. I know that, for example, our leaves are moved into through the compactor into a trailer and hauled off site. They go into the same trailer as brush and our bag. Some of the other communities that have larger spaces will contract with a topsoil provider, I guess, and they will take all of that material at no cost to the village and move it off site and compost it themselves. They need
Yeah.
that Browns. We don't have the ability to do that. We don't have that type of storage space. We have to process it through a transfer.
In Glendale. Does Glendale have a,
Glendale contracts, Glendale, I believe, contracts for both refuse and yard waste. The thing,
with waste management then?
I assume, again, waste management's the only place you're in town anymore. Most of the other communities that have yard waste collection do not do it at nearly the level that we. So like Bayside, for example, picks up leaves once a month. Pick up yard waste, brush once a month. Yard waste, I'm not sure the frequency, but it's a much lower frequency than I think. Anecdotally, my understanding is part of that is in some communities, they have larger yards and they're able to capture and contain more of that material. That's not always an option on a 40 by 120 lot. So part of it is due to land use, part of it is due to service price.
You know, I think one thing we talk about is service levels, and we've got a very high quality level of service here in the village. Let's say we contract with Waste Management. You know, who takes those calls? Would somebody come out that day to remove somebody's trash that they forgot? You know, what's the service like for Waste Management? And also, I'd have to say, if we get rid of our trash compactor, then you've got Whitefish Bay that, you know, we'll have to be contracting with Waste Management as well. So we're going to have to fit ourselves into a schedule with Waste Management doing everybody in the North Shore. What's that service value like compared to, let's say, a Shorewood?
Exactly, no question. I will tell you that early on, my tenure here with Waste Management, under our contract, they are required to provide a customer service line. It is not a exclusive representative. That would be, so if someone from Shorewood called, they would get the same person. It's an 800 number. It's a wide call center. Early on in our tenure, we did try to go down that route when people had issues with recycling, and frankly, Waste Management prefers that we do. But I cannot, if I had a nickel for every time someone told me, I don't pay taxes to Waste Management, I pay them to you, fix it, I would be retired by now. So I think that's the expectation in this community, is not that they are going to sit on hold at a call center. They're correct. They don't pay their tax management. They pay them to the Village of Shorewood. It's the Village of Shorewood that administers that contract, and they expect that we will do our best to do that.
And if somebody calls Shorewood DPW, will somebody come out and pick up that trash that was missed that day, or is
That
it the next
recycling?
day for recycling?
Almost never.
Yeah.
So these are really good questions. We have 10 more minutes in our committee meeting, and I want us to get to giving direction to staff. I will follow up with, these are all great points and really good questions that are being raised. I think it makes sense to direct staff to gather information about an offsite location, a new location first, for a lot of the reasons why that Trustee Ursing brought up. The historic preservation, I think we would, if Public Works was able to vacate that site, not only is it an opportunity for some of the priorities that we have in terms of housing and historic preservation, it also, having a modern site, makes us more desirable to share services with or to consolidate in the future. And I am intrigued with the service level conversation. I know that I have been through it, and so it doesn't take the place of everybody doing that together. But given that the recommendation that came back, I'm comfortable giving direction, because we have to start this process. And if we do, I really like the interest and the appetite for more information and to sort of become more expert, subject matter experts on this department. If we go that route, it is going to require extra meeting time, because this cannot take 3 years. to make this decision. So it is gonna be on us. If we want to do this level of study and consideration, then we are gonna have to do it. We're gonna have to really take that on, and we're gonna have to do it. Because I also don't think that it's realistic to direct staff to pursue 3 avenues at one time, because you can't do that well. And we can't learn it well. So we all are going to have different styles of decision-making and learning and all that, and we can try to, accommodate that. But I think that in this type of change management, I think it makes sense to give direction in the, I think, so anyway, I'm comfortable with giving direction to pursue the offsite option first, so that we can then decide if we have what those unknowns are. So, because we have to do something. Yes.
Do we have to give any direction tonight to staff for those kind of very critical elements? Is that something we all need to talk about tonight? And
Which critical elements?
so the critical elements of like DPW, the thing, and Village Hall, like those things
No.
that need to be done in the first
No.
year or two.
The only 2 things that we're looking for direction on tonight, because it's a big elephant, so you take one bite at a time. So we're trying to narrow that focus. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been agreement that we would like to invest minimally and develop a long-term solution for the facility.
Mhm.
Say that
We're-
again.
Agreed. Invest minimally and develop a long-term solution for the facility.
Invest minimally.
Right now, to just put to
Keep the
fix
money,
that critical
fix the
things.
stuff that's critical. So that DPW can still continue to
Right. So,
function.
but we're not putting any number out there. Minimally is what,
Right.
to whom?
No, that's the thing that would come during a budget talk. We're
comes
not
back up.
accepting, we got projections tonight, but those are not hard numbers. So there's nothing tonight, but just reflecting back that we're in agreement that the structure as it stands is not a long-term solution. What we have now, to your point, trustee Kodo, it's not working. It's not a long-term solution. Even with investing $2 million, it's not necessarily a long-term solution. And so pursuing a long-term solution would be looking at a total rebuild on that site or looking off-site. And in order, maybe we would, so what we're looking for tonight is direction for one of those things, because we can't study more than one thing at a time.
But how can you make a decision if you only have choice A? How can you make a decision if you don't know what B, C, and D are? I mean,
Well,
Right,
why
we-
would you go
What do you-
down
what
that
do you-
path without knowing?
We have a list of critical things that we need to take care of in the first year. Those are the things that we're going to
Oh.
look at right now,
Oh,
right?
Okay.
I mean, so look at the
so
list.
they're not looking at another site right now.
But we're going to be looking at all the options. We're going to be
So,
exploring.
Maybe
the
I
other-
can help decipher.
Mhm.
I have no problem looking at another site. What I won't do, and what I promise I will vote against, is if we go down the road looking at only another site,
Mhm.
and then we try to do that without taking a look at our current site.
Mhm.
And our operations.
And operations, like I am fine taking a look at another
Mhm.
site and recognizing we have, in order of operations, we have to do this. First one is taking a look at another site. Second operation is taking a look at what services we want, or if we want to stay in Shorewood. But I will vote against and have a serious problem with, let's take a look at another site. Okay, here's step 2 on another site. Here's step 3 on another site. And we never came back and looked at Shorewood. We never came back and looked at our service. So I'm fine with this being number 1. Just know that I'm not going to be okay getting to step 2 without taking a look at what we currently have.
Mhm.
I think that's fair.
I agree. And in the meantime, we do need to spend money
Yeah.
on some things that have to be done. So, I
Mhm.
mean, that's
And that will
totally,
be part of the budgeting process.
Yeah.
It's not going to be separate from the budget.
totally fine. Yep.
So with timeline, we gave you the directive. We kind of understand what it's going to take to, maybe redo this current site, because we
Mhm.
understand what the site is, but we don't know what it's going to take to build on another site. So I think investigating that option right now is the first step. Once we kind of have a general idea of what that looks like, then we're going to come back and kind of figure out, if we're gonna bulldoze everything there or keep everything, what site, that option number 2, staying on site looks like, right? Is that kind of the general idea? We're gonna take one at a time. Will we have both of those, will we have both of those options to look at, or will we have move to another site option, look at that option, and then we'll take the time to look at, we'll take the time to assess what building or renovating that the current site will look like. Will we have to take a look at this one and then wait and then take a look at this one, or will we be able to look at both of them side to side?
I think what I'd like to do is take the feedback that, because I think there's been a lot of good feedback tonight. This has been a really helpful discussion. And so I'd like to take what I've heard and then come back to you in August to say, okay, here's the feedback that we heard. There's already some framework for either way to proceed, and let us contemplate that and come back to you with some recommendations on how to proceed.
What I would love to see is a timeline on how long. Right? 'Cause like, we don't want you, I don't want you doing 6 months of work on option A and then having to do 6 months of work on B, because then we're a year down the road and then we have to wait for budget again. And it's like, are we to take sort of the first step of option A, which is moving the facility? How long do you think it would take to take a real look at that step? And I don't need the answer right now.
Oh, okay.
But- no, yeah.
don't have it
No, but I mean, like,
I want to get.
If that's what
Yeah.
you can come back in August with.
Yeah.
To help inform us as to the next step, I think that would be super helpful for me.
Well, I guess then the question becomes, does staff do this themselves or do you hire this out?
So, and I appreciate all of the conversation, but we will take a look at that and we'll come back to you.
Because the other thing I would like to discuss a little bit is, Brown Deer took the lead on saying, let's look at consolidating police. And we didn't ask to be part of that study, but we are. And staff is spending time on their idea about consolidating the police departments on the North Shore. What if we took the lead and said, we would like all North Shore communities to get together and look at public works? What are you doing? Not that I don't want to consolidate our public works, but where could we collaborate? Why couldn't we be the leader saying, let's look at this area? Brown Deer led on police, let's lead on public works. Let's all sit together in a room and see what could we do together? Because I know Fox Point is looking at a new DPW site. So
Right.
you would think they would certainly be at the table.
Well, I don't know that we can't do that, but I know that we can't be part of that conversation if we don't have a working site. So it's order of operations again. We have to make a decision about a building,
So you're
a
saying
site.
we can't have a discussion with other municipalities with our site as it is now?
Well, that's not what's on the table. My point is, we need to stay focused on, we are being asked to give direction so that we can get more information on options about our site. That's what we're focused on right now. I hear you 100% that service collaboration opportunity is real. That is a different process and conversation. We don't have to do that before we decide about a site. Or there may be ways to marry it down the road, but this is what's in front of us right now. And that's what I have to hold us accountable to.
So there'd be no delivery of alternative service, no discussion of alternative service delivery?
I'm not hearing that, but I'm purposely interrupting only because we are at
Yeah.
7:30.
Because I would like to see that for sure.
I have feedback that I know that now I can do something next with, right? And bring something back in August. So I'm going to do that. But for the meantime, I
We
would
need to-
recommend closing the meeting to get to the
Mhm.
regular meeting.
I think we
Because we're
can,
at 7:30.
and we completed our task for tonight. We gave enough feedback that and direction that staff knows something to do. And in the meantime, in the, I can't remember what page it's on, but in the UWM report that we received, it had kind of a decision-making tree around, if you choose this route, this is what the questions you will give, and this is the information you gather. If you choose this route, this is what that looks like. So just so you know that that's kind of, what we would be following. So I appreciate that. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned at 7:32. Take a bio break and we will. All right, thank you, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the village board to order at 7:39. I believe all trustees and members of the board are present except for trustee Baldoff, who is excused this evening. Has this meeting been publicly noticed?
The meeting has been properly noticed and posted according to law.
Thank you. Item 4, special order of business, of which we have none this evening. So moving on to item 5, consent agenda items. Is there a move?
I'd like to make a motion
Okay,
to move new business item A to the consent agenda. Or do B. Look like that. I mean, I'm happy if someone else wants.
is,
I bet you
Well,
they'll go
let's
pretty
say-
quick. I bet you the consent agenda will go pretty quick.
so trustee Kudo made a motion. Is there a second? Motion fails due to lack of second.
Sorry, guys, it'll go quick.
Is there a motion to
They're here. They might
approve?
as well watch some of the action.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by trustee Kudo, seconded by trustee Ursink. Any discussion? Trustee Stokbrand?
Could we remove item C is in cat and F is in Frank, please?
5C and 5F. Anything else? It goes on to the next page, just so everyone knows. All right, agreement to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 5C and 5F.
I'd like to move item I, please.
To pull it?
Please.
Yep. All right, agreement to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 5C, 5F, and 5I. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 6, items removed from the consent agenda. Item 5C, consider special village board minutes, June 13th, 2022. Trustee Stokbrand.
Yeah, this was the special meeting we had on the long-range financial plan, which was under a new process. And I was just, it seemed to me that in the minutes, I believe there was something about the floor was open for discussion. Trustees went in round robin fashion to discuss their views on the matter. Inquiries were made for clarification, and Director Manuelson explained the fiscal forecast and its comparative prospective. Motion carried 5-1. When we're talking about something as important as a long-range financial plan, I'm wondering if we could get a little more input. And I will at least, I'd like to defer this. I would like to at least provide something about why I was the dissenting vote on this.
In the minutes.
That I can provide in the coming days.
I think you could provide that under your village trustee report.
If I
And
had
it
it
could,
ready today, I would.
you could do it at a future meeting, but typically we record the nay votes, but not the reasons.
I don't think that's accurately, previously we did represent perspective.
We can do whatever is the current protocol. I mean, we've been all over the place with minutes, so
I think the minutes were becoming an issue because there was so much information and so much time. I think we lost a clerk because of the actual minutes. So because of how much information, I'm just,
Yeah.
because of all the information and all the time and effort it takes to actually transcribe meetings and put all that work into all the different perspectives and all the different conversations. So I think we went from that into just recording
Mhm.
votes.
So your request is you'd like to insert your reason for voting no.
Dissent, right. And I really don't know if this is the place we want to get into why the last village clerk left without, why would we speculate on that?
Right, and this isn't a discussion of minutes. So I guess what the discussion proposal about minutes would be related to corrections at this time. And we can follow up on your request. I mean, I'm not here to, confirm or deny. I just don't know what our current, I don't want to start a new practice. But I think that it would be,
So I'd move to defer. And I'll provide
Okay.
an amendment.
okay. Is there a second?
You reread the motion, please.
I move to defer the minutes from the Village Special Board meeting June 13th to allow for an amendment.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Right.
So, 4-2. So two, trustee Kudo and trustee Stokebrand voted yay. Voted yes on the motion, and trustee Lynn, trustee Arndorfer, trustee Ursink, and President McCaig voted nay.
Do we now need a
So-
separate motion to approve those minutes as is?
Yes.
Can I recommend a motion just to approve the minutes as is?
Second.
Motion to approve by trustee Lynn, seconded by trustee Ursink. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
So motion passes with 4 yeses and 2 nos. Thank you. Moving on, item 5F, consider special event permit for the Kegel Slow Roll, August 28th, 2022. I believe we received some information via email this afternoon because the description was cut off of the materials in the packet. Trustee Stokebrand, did you want to add to that?
1 second. I don't know if there's the projector went out or if Zoom is totally out. Maybe
We're
it's just
still
the
on Zoom.
projector. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Sorry. You can proceed.
Oh, for those on Zoom, we're just taking a break while we fix the projector. We need one of those screens with music like do, 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 do.
There we go.
All right, we are back on camera. Thank you. So trustee Stokebrand, did you want to add something or?
Yes, there was, I believe this was the first time last year was the first time this event went through the village of Shorewood. And I sent an email to Chief Worth about this. And my concern was, since it's a neighborhood I live in, I'm familiar with what happened that day. And while it was wonderful to see a lot of people on bicycles, it was not wonderful to see them on bicycles on the sidewalk. And so I'm wondering, I don't want to not be supportive of the event because it's for a good cause. I did send an email to the person leading the program, the person who applied for the permit, and I don't see her here. Amelia, I believe. I'm wondering if this would be a teachable moment for them if they want to ride their bikes through Shorewood, which is wonderful. Could they please educate everyone that if you're 13 or older, you're not supposed to be on the sidewalk? Because you literally, if you had a dog or a stroller for several hours in that morning, you couldn't walk on the sidewalk safely. And you could say, well, you could walk on the other side of the sidewalk, but everybody walks on the lake side because there are no crosswalks and you can walk without paying as much attention. So is there any way to communicate to the organizers that we're concerned about the adults riding on the sidewalk? And we love to have you here. We think it's a great idea. We want you to come through Shorewood. But we have an ordinance that says if you're 12 and younger, you can be on the sidewalk. But if you're 13, you're supposed to be, I mean, this is how you learn to ride a bicycle safely is practice.
Great. Staff?
We can make that request that they educate their participants of that requirement.
Is that satisfactory?
Yep.
Great.
If we reach out and then we'll see how it goes this year and
Right. Is there any,
but maybe if it came from Chief Worth, it would have, I'm just saying.
right. But you said you did, you
I did send her an
communicated-
email. I
Great.
just checked and she didn't respond yet.
Okay. Could we make a note to, providing that this gets passed, that perhaps the board meeting after the event, village manager could report on how things went, or maybe
You
you're.
know, I'm not sure we need to make it that complicated. I think if someone from staff, you know, I will certainly communicate to her as I already have in the email. I don't want to add another thing to staff's plate. So personally, I think something from the village police chief might have some gravitas that I might not, but I'll just pursue it on my own with her if that's okay with everybody else. I think they should be aware of it, that it was a problem.
It sounds
Otherwise,
like village
know.
manager is happy to communicate that.
okay,
Great.
that'd probably be better.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for raising it. All right. Any other discussion? Would you like to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
I move to approve the special event permit for the Kegel Slow Roll on August 28th, 2022.
Second.
All right. Motion by trustee Stokbrand, seconded by trustee Lynn. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Item 5I, consider service agreement for financial advisory services. Trustee Kudo.
Inadvertently do the wrong one. I was going for Metro Market Boulevard.
Oh.
The
That
wrong
would
one?
be-
That's what I thought, yeah.
Hmm.
Come on, like, patient.
No, I is financial service.
I is service agreement for financial advisors.
Oh,
Might-
L.
yeah,
L is.
L.
it's a failed you.
L.
Wow.
It can happen anyone.
I knew I should have gone to Atwater.
Okay, so that has been approved already, but if you'd like to make a note. Oh,
Oh,
correct.
I'll
So,
make the motion to approve that.
okay.
Item I.
Second,
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay, service agreement for financial advisory services is approved unanimously. So point of order, Attorney Bear. I guess my question for trustee Kurgo would be, is there, did you plan to oppose the measure, or is there something that you wanted to note in
Just a-
terms of?
More just a quick discussion in opposition. But it's already passed, so my only question was we get concern about that building. Thought that planters added beautification until they were hit by cars to the building. So while I understand protecting the building, bollards, I would have liked to bollards with some plantings in, because zoning study has shown us people are not very fond of the opportunity to make it prettier. I would be for, but I
Maybe
have
that
lost
could
my
be-
turn because I know.
Right.
No, we're good.
I think if it wouldn't change the outcome, perhaps, I think it
No.
would be helpful to be under a report or in an email.
Yeah, I mean, it's, taking greenery away from a block long doesn't make a sense to me when they could have done both. I don't see why I had. But ship has
Noted.
sailed.
Mhm. All right, thank you. Moving on to item 7, public hearings, which there are none. Item 8, citizens to be heard. This is for matters not on the agenda or later in the agenda if you cannot stay to be heard at that time. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to be heard on a matter that is not on the agenda or occurring later? I can't tell if we have anyone. Is that a hand? Nope. Okay. All right. All right, moving on to item 9, new business. 9A, consider ordinance 3407, traffic analysis, parking and TAPR request for additional traffic control signage and pavement marking at Maryland Avenue and Menlo Boulevard. This is coming to us from Public Works Committee, which it came out of with a 3-0 approval. And so I'll just hand it to Trustee Ursink if there's anything you wanted to summarize.
You know, I would say that there's probably not too much more I'd add to this. One thing to think about though, a bigger picture is that we do have policies and, there's times where, there's certain requests that may warrant to go above and beyond our current policy. And I feel like, these two matters, do with one, it being proximity to the school and the other where.
Just take 9A, that's all it were.
9A. Yep.
You can repeat yourself on 9B if you like.
No, I will. I'll say, in 9A, a resident has had traffic concerns with cars coming into his yard. There's a lot of kids in that neighborhood. So I think above all, public safety is paramount in this community. And it being such a walkable community, we have to take measures that can protect our residents and their property. So I think, while I would typically be very strict with our policies because we spend so much time and effort and energy in putting, making these policies, I feel like these two particular items are very, can deviate from that. And I think they're warranted.
And that was the general, you're kind of.
Yep. That was the
sharing
general consensus with
3-0,
the,
it's
yep.
pretty indicative.
A very enthusiastic group for stop signs.
Yes, I'm one of the original pro stop sign people, I gotta say. So I know that the 2 residents who are most closely, who presented at Public Works and have communicated with the board and submitted additional materials are here. I don't think you need to go through your presentation again. Is there anything that has not been shared with committee that, well, I guess I might open it up to questions from is there anything new that has not been presented that you would like to share?
Hi, Dan Wicklund, 2212 East Menlo. Just something new.
Oh,
in reading.
could you speak right into the mic and be as loud as me? And
I can be loud.
And also spell your name
Yep.
because.
Wicklund, Wycklent. I
And your
always
address one more time.
2212 East Menlo Boulevard in Shorewood. I always read over agenda as well in advance of meetings. So as I was reading the agenda tonight, I noticed that there was a letter from one of the firms we use to kind of look at these things. And I just want to make a couple points. In that letter, in that email, it said that we did not have the data on the traffic. I actually did. We did a nice study that was completed in 2020 that I'm pretty familiar with, but it did show on here. It said, even though we have this high standard of 6,000 here, he said 2,000 was the number. In that section on the traffic study that we have, it shows 2,500 just on Maryland alone. So that's not even including Menlo. And if you look at that, that's up there. That's not Lake Drive, not Capitol or Oakland or Morris, but it's higher than every other section on that study. If we did that 6,000 number, we'd have barely any stop signs in the village. So I know this is an exception, but sometimes they're warranted in places where safety is necessary. So I just want to say when I was looking at those numbers, that is something that did stick out to me. That's it. Thanks.
Is that a village traffic study?
Yeah, it's our village traffic study from 2020. So all the numbers are on there. To put it in perspective on Morris, it was 2,400. We put that stop sign down on the intersection of Morris and Menlo. This is 2,500. And that's not both streets. That's not Menlo and Maryland. That's just Maryland. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so there is a suggested motion in the packet, and if somebody would like to make that motion at this time, that's, I would entertain that. If not, we will go around and see where people are at.
I'll make it.
Okay,
I move approval of ordinance 3047, amending the village code to regulate north and southbound Maryland Avenue traffic at East Menlo Boulevard through stop signs. I further direct staff to install do not enter signs at the entrance of the north side of the 2200 block Boulevard section of East Menlo Boulevard, and direct staff to mark the crosswalk, which extends from the south curb line of the 2100 block of Menlo across Maryland to the ramp at the north side of the 2200 block Boulevard section as soon as practical.
Second.
okay, motion by trustee Kudo, seconded by trustee Lynn. Discussion, trustee Ursink?
There's usually fiscal sort of numbers added in here. Do we have an idea of the cost of the stop signs, the do not enter signs, and then painting the walkways?
Is that required, and is it in the memo? I feel like.
I think it was sign installation would be accompanied with the EPW 20 budget.
Mhm. And then the markings would be in next year's budget because our program has ended for the year,
Correct.
or we
That-
can't
that
add
was
to
gonna
it.
Be my point too, that crosswalks won't get updated. Yeah,
Mhm.
but-
Director Bushlick, is there other considerations fiscally that we should?
Have a request into the contractor to see if they will be in the area yet this year
Oh,
for the possibility of marking that walk.
okay,
If not, then it would be added to program.
okay. Do we need to have those costs in our motion? Anybody? Do we typically? I don't think it's necessary.
The do not enter signs were ordered already, right? So
Already been ordered. The stop signs will also be part of our sign budget. I do not have a number for you for the marking.
Mhm. Okay, thank you, trustee Stokran.
I'm just curious if we're going to mark a crosswalk, would we not use the wide stripes? I mean, it just seems at this point, if we're going to mark them, you know, what I'm saying,
I
that
think
international.
we do the wide stripes for any new markings, correct? Yeah, unless there's a marking already there where we would have to like grind it out and redo it. Anytime we do a new marking, we do the wide stripes.
Okay, so the one that I'm seeing on page 127, I believe, is not accurate. It would be the big blocky stripes.
Just to clarify, typically we do the continental or the ladder style markings on arterials and in commercial corridors. Technically, Maryland is an arterial, so if you'd like us to mark it that way, we will. Otherwise, our standard crosswalk marking in a residential area is the transverse parallel line. But you tell me how you'd like it to look.
Did the committee come up, make a recommendation? No,
No, we did not.
I'll defer to them.
Okay. So,
Motion on the floor.
yeah, motions on the floor, other comments?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what trustee Ursink said. I generally think the policies here are right. I do think that there are some situations that merit exceptions. I do think just the relatively character of this specific stretch of road does merit looking differently than maybe the case.
Mhm.
One last thing, another point that was also brought up in Public Works was that Menlo Boulevard is really like a park. It's really utilized like a park, even though it technically isn't. And
Mhm.
in a park area, we would have a stop sign.
Mhm. Yeah, I really appreciated the way that you prepared the materials. It was very thoughtful and a good communication. And also highlighting that Menlo is the main way to get to SIS. And it's one of those, it's easy to forget that SIS is one of those you can't get there from here kind of. It seems like it should be just like right through the high school parking lot, but it kind of isn't, and all that stuff. So all right, if there's no further discussion, this will be a roll call vote.
I did have one more thing. This
Yes.
is not just for the construction period, right? This is forward, right?
Mhm.
Trustee Lynn,
Aye.
trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
President McKay,
Aye.
trustee Kudo,
Aye.
trustee Stokbrand.
Aye.
Ayes have it 6-0.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming over.
Thank you guys for your help
Yeah.
on this one too.
You guys-
Okay. I am just going to take a moment here. There was a flash flood warning that came in and I'm worried about staff who lives far away. Should we take a recess just to assess? Oh, you live far away too. Hmm? No, I mean,
Got a Jeep.
It's not just a Jeep. It's
I'll take
like,
everyone
else.
it's like an extra
I'm
Jeep.
gonna say officially, I would feel more comfortable. I would like to take a 2-minute recess just to
Yeah.
assess
Check the
this
weather.
weather alert that came through. And so we will just stop the recording for a few minutes and then we'll reconvene immediately. All right, thank you. We will reconvene at 8:07 and take up 9B, consider ordinance 3048, TAPR request for stop sign, stop sign controlling traffic on southbound North Kramer Street at East Lake Bluff Boulevard. This was submitted by trustee Kudo, went through Public Works Committee, came out with a 3-0 recommendation to approve. There's a recommended motion in our packet if somebody would like to make that. At this time, I would entertain it. If not, we can go around.
And then just Public Works, this is another situation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you.
That's all right.
Right, I'll hand it over to the chair.
I mimic a
First
lot of
thing-
what I said in the first, for item A is, this is a really unique situation. We're very close to a school. There's going to be, obviously a lot of construction going on and a lot of movement in that area. So, and currently at that kind of intersection there is no traffic, there's no stop sign, there's no signage right now. So I think, with the amount of kids that kind of travel up and down that corridor, with that construction happening, I think it's probably, we all thought that it was
Right.
a valid idea to put a stop sign there.
Right, so it was a 3-0 vote. Is there anything that you want to add, trustee Lynn?
Just that it was a completely uncontrolled intersection. It's so close to the school that it just, I think, warranted that extra consideration.
Appreciated. Is there any new information, trustee Kudo, that you'd like to provide that was not in the application?
Same intersection.
Okay. Is there a motion? No, we haven't had a motion. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move approval of ordinance 3048 establishing the placement of a stop sign controlling southbound traffic on North Kramer Street at the intersection of East Lake Bluff Boulevard.
I'll second.
All right, we have a trustee Lynn with a motion, seconded by trustee Kudo. Any discussion?
I've looked at that intersection a lot and found it a lot. I do think some signage is justified there. I personally would be more comfortable and supportive of a yield sign than a stop sign. I think that seems a more compelling choice just in terms of providing direction and, as noted, otherwise I just think it turns to a stop sign that people tend to ignore when, really we want to inspire caution versus anything else. So,
Was that discussed?
Well, my concern with a yield versus a stop sign is that given the nature that it's a 3-way intersection and that Lake Bluff is more of a thoroughfare, cars are already approaching it in a yielding fashion. So to add an extra layer of, further stoppage, even though with full knowledge that a lot of people don't come to a complete stop necessarily on a stop sign like that, but at least having it as an official stop sign at least is just like a second barrier to what's kind of already being done, which is a casual slowing down and then just whipping around the corner.
I would also note that as you're coming south on Kramer, turning west onto Lake Bluff, that side of the street will be shut down during construction for the building on the of Lake Bluff and Oakland. And so kids and families will be forced to cross the street from the northern side to the southern side of Lake Bluff. So if there's not a stop sign there, it's just a yield sign, like Trustee Lynn said, it's a slow down and pass through, as opposed to stopping and then recognizing that kids are crossing Lake Bluff right in front of you. And so again, I think it was just a matter of added protection, and like Trustee Ursing said, that the volume of children walking to and from Lake Bluff every day is pretty large. I mean, it's probably the largest arterial to the school that we have. So, and this is, I mean, these are just concerns. I mean, obviously I live very close, but these are concerns that, you know, parents and other villagers have mentioned. And frankly, I'm surprised this wasn't done a long time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, this will be a roll call vote also.
Trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
trustee Orndorfer,
Abstain.
trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee McKay, pardon me, President McKay,
Aye.
trustee Kudo,
Aye.
trustee Lynn.
Aye.
Sorry, I don't have my cheat sheet with all your names in front of me right now. If not, I would have been more organized. Thank you. Motion carries 5-0 with one abstention.
Okay, moving on to 9C, consider lead service line replacement program outreach plan. Director Bushlick.
It might be a bit of a stretch to call this a plan.
Right,
More of an
right.
outline.
Mhm.
As you know, projects, we've done a project management and communication plan. That is not this.
Mhm.
Project management and communication plan identifies dates, milestones, responsibilities of tasks. This is really just a list, you can call it a laundry list, that'd be
Mhm.
okay, of the different methods of outreach that we will use to communicate our lead service line replacement program. That program will be done at least for the next several years in conjunction with infrastructure projects that are already on the books. At earliest, we would have a standalone lead service line replacement program in 2027. So really, this is just to identify to you all the ways that we intend to communicate this program through the course of in addition to these upcoming projects that we already have in queue.
Mhm.
So if you have
Appreciate it.
options or can identify additional means, I'd be very thrilled to take those.
Right, definitely. We have a board that has a lot of communications expertise on it. And so this is kind of a chance to give feedback very high level, because again, this is all going to come back to us with dates, times, specifics, closer to project time. But this is really the sort of the nuts and bolts and the pieces and the components of what will be implemented. So feedback on that. Trustee Ursink and then trustee Arndorfer.
Yeah, one area I think we could, or one thing that I think we could include is probably a special meeting or a special community sort of town hall on, the direction of this and where we see it going and a timeline. So I think, trying to get people into the village center and have this discussion would probably be a good idea to add to our list of outreach mechanisms.
Of introducing the program because it's going to go for a long time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Oh, Trustee
would agree
Arndorfer.
with Trustee Ursink on that. I think that kind of public engagement makes a lot of sense. I don't want to go down a wormhole on this one, but I was just wondering, to what extent have we been using QR codes in communication, and do we have any read on kind of, pickup we get on that? Anyone have an answer on that? I'm just wondering how that might work as a communication vehicle moving forward.
We haven't used them frequently with every project. We have incorporated them in some areas, and Assistant Village Manager Chris Anderson really likes to use them. So I would anticipate that you're going to see their usage moving forward. So Chris, is there a way to monitor their usage to see how successful they are?
Yes, and in addition to responses, I'm a big fan of the Office 365 tools. So I've used Microsoft Forms in various outreach mechanisms or outreach opportunities. So we could double check what the scan looks like and how many, of course, responses we're receiving.
Yeah, I'm just, yeah, it just seems like it could be an interesting tool for
Sure.
the village. So just interesting. So I'll stop now.
You could direct further questions and comments
Sure,
via
yes.
email, and you can report out at any time during your
will.
officials report.
Thank you.
Trustee Stokebrand.
So did I hear you say that we don't think we'll start to implement the lead service replacement line program until 2027? Oh, okay.
We would not do it as a standalone project until 2027. We will be replacing lead service lines as part of the phase 1 combined sewer in 23, phase 2 in 24, Oakland Avenue in 25, and Lake Drive in 26. It will not be until 2027 that we have a project that isn't tied to infrastructure, but is standalone lead service line water main replacement project.
Okay, so that's the critical piece that I think people need to understand. And I know there's a lot of, this is very complicated, and you're not going to be able to dumb this down enough, quite honestly. I mean, I think you really, because it's so complicated and it's got so many different facets. People will be, it's easy to be confused. I'm sure not for you, but for the layperson in the village. I think, thank God for the website, right? Because you don't have to pay for it. But I think, you know, the mailings that you do, I know you use uniquely colored mail pieces and stuff. But, you know, I don't know what we have in terms of staff with design capabilities. But I would say, you know, like getting an icon, and Jim, this is more your area, probably Arthur too, than me. Get an icon that people can look at, and I don't know if we have someone that they can see that and think, oh, this is about what I want to know, because I'm still curious to see if I'm going to have to pay $7,000 or $1,000, and when is mine coming? That'd be
So
my.
We have typically, I shouldn't say typically, in the last couple of years, I've made a concerted effort to brand our projects, to create logos for the projects, to think the water meter replacement program, you know, with the hope that someone sees that and makes that connection. I have not yet done that for this project, and I don't design those. I have ideas in my head, but typically we've used the graphic designer at Shoreward Press to do those. I think he does a fabulous. That's me.
As long as we're not violating a copyrighted.
Nope, they're totally original. This particular project is a bit of a challenge, because you know, when you think of a lead, it's not going to be a chunk of lead pipe. It could be a glass of fresh drinking water, but that could stand for a lot of things. So quite honestly, coming into this meeting, it was not really my intention to use a catchy graphic, just because I'm having a difficult time making a connection with lead and a catchy graphic. So I did have a sort of, I wouldn't call it a logo, but something that's on your list there that you can see that includes Village of Shorewood and lead service line replacement and utility logo. But we can certainly go back to the drawing board on that and try and come up with something that seems like an obvious, more obvious.
We can have a contest.
We could do that.
So anyway, I think that these are really good ideas. And so I'm sure that Director Bushlick will take them, and anything more specific that you need to follow up on, I think you can engage the idea person. Let me just say, Trustee Lynn, you look like you were maybe.
No, I think this is great. I love that this was all put together. I think like the main things to put out there is one, that we're trying to get to your lead lines as soon as possible. And two, we're trying to make it cost as least as possible.
Right.
And we're doing the best we can. So.
Okay,
And I think stress the fluidity of it right now.
right. Trustee Kudo, did you have anything before we hear from other folks?
No, I mean, I DPW together and discuss it in an appropriate way. I just, like Trustee Stokebrand said, you could go door to door and knock on every door and tell everyone our plan, questions. So just to the extent that you can set something up that answers the FAQs so that you're not answering every FAQ. But again,
Yeah.
So if I were to make a motion, do you want me to include some sort of public engagement event, or would that be something that you could just include into this? Make it part of the motion. Okay. I move approval of the lead service line replacement outreach plan, including a public engagement event.
Second.
Motion by trustee Ursink, seconded by trustee Arndorfer. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Moving on to 9D, it is still Department of Public Works. Update on AMI water meter replacement project. You have been busy.
We have.
Mhm.
So I'm going to try to keep this very brief. And then
Right.
let
There
you
is a
ask
pretty
specific
detailed-
questions that you want. Right.
Yeah, we have a very detailed memo in our packet, so this is mostly for questions from the board.
The Vanguard Utility Service has completed its subcontractual installation of water meters. Typically, they look to do a industry standard. Generally, they do about 90% or are able to get into about 90%, and that's about where we're at. So not unexpected. We are transitioning to the installation to be done by our staff. I expect the next 2 weeks, we'll be doing some additional training. We have a Clara, who is the software provider, coming in to do another training for us week after next. Midwest Meter is working with us later this week to do some additional troubleshooting training on installations. And as I said, we will begin installations by our staff probably in earnest the week of July 25th. We have approximately 300 homes properties, I should say, they're not all homes, that we still need to get into. And our deadline is October 31st. So I will say right now, we will not be granted access to every one of those properties. There are probably a handful of homes in the village of Shorewood that have not been inhabited for many years, even going on decades. They're maintained, the property taxes are paid, but no one lives there. Such, probably not get in.
Okay. Question, trustee Kudo.
just a couple clarifying questions. Of the 10% that remain, what's the percentage of folks who never called Vanguard? I mean, Vanguard was great about calling me and setting something up, but what's the percentage of folks you just haven't heard anything back from?
I would say you're asking me to do math on the fly, so I'm just going to give you raw numbers.
Sure.
Which is, we probably have 50 or so who had originally scheduled an appointment, and for whatever reason, that appointment was not completed. Based on the data that I get on a regular basis, it's not easy for me to tell whether that was an issue with the installation or it was a no-show on either party's part. But we do know that we've had at least initial contact with 50-ish of the 300 or so on our list.
Of the 250 that remain,
Haven't heard a peep.
the rule breakers, I'll call. What happens? Like, what's the,
Next step is disconnection notices.
and when would the actual disconnection happen?
So we actually have issued about 80 disconnection notices to this point, have not shut off anyone's water. Typically that gets people's attention,
I would imagine.
but not always. So the process that an iteration of this board approved about 2 years ago now. So PSC dictates the disconnection process. Their administrative code states that prior to disconnection, you have to give someone 10 days notice, and that needs to be done. They say first class mail. We upped that to certified simply because, this is not something that we take lightly. Want to make sure that people are afforded that opportunity and not just something they miss in the mail. So our process includes a certified letter stating a disconnection date of 10 days from the issuance of that letter. 5 days from the stated disconnection date, we are required to post the residence or the dwelling. What that means is we take a notice, the water service will be disconnected on this date, this time, unless you call us to schedule an appointment. That on red cardstock, and we tape it to every entry point on the ground level. So that, I hear it all the time. I don't use my front door. Why would you leave a notice in my front door? Because we don't like crawling
Why
around
would
the
you not
back of the
call us
house,
back?
right? So, but we are going to do it. Our standard practice is not to notice anything other than the front door because we don't like to be in people's backyard. But in this case, we are going to. And then on the day of the disconnection or scheduled disconnection, if we still have not heard from them, we will drive to the residence, knock on the door, we will tell them what we're doing. We will turn off the water at the curb unless they agree to let us in. But what our plan is to schedule disconnections for Tuesdays and Thursdays, schedule regular appointments for Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And the reason being that if we get to the point of a disconnection and a resident is like, no, okay, you can come in. Well, we have that opportunity. We want to get in there right then. I don't want to say, well, we'll be back later today or we'll be back, right now. So as of now, that's how we're approaching it. The trick is going to be coordinating all of the notices and the postings. As I mentioned, this is something we take very seriously. And if I post a home for disconnection on Tuesday at 9 o'clock, I want to be sure that we are going to be there at Tuesday at 9 o'clock. It's not going to be Tuesday at 10. It's not going to be Wednesday at, it's Tuesday at 9. So we have to be very careful that we don't issue more notices than we're capable of following up on. So that is going to be a little trial and error, I think, but we're definitely going to err on the side of caution or being conservative and issuing fewer notices in a batch until we can get a very good handle on what we really are capable of doing and people's responses. Not something, I don't want to do it. I do not want to do this, but it's really the only tool left in our toolbox and we have to get these meetings.
Are there any legal ramifications for us for shutting off water? Do we get through everything? Okay.
But can you have occupancy if you don't have?
No.
So that's the
So-
ramification.
Right, so that
have
disconnection
it.
process does outline that at the 5-day notice, we do have to notify, we will be notifying North Shore Health, the village attorney. Not required to notify the police department, but we will do that. We also notify the building inspector. That was the downer.
So all of that, or you can let somebody in your house. Okay, I have no problem with any of that.
Is there anything we can do to help as trustees or public officials?
I think it's that. If people talk to you about this and are angry about it, this isn't the first step. This is the last step in a very long process.
And it's avoidable.
Exactly.
It is
It's
avoidable.
free.
It's free.
I paid nothing. I mean, I paid nothing to have it.
Trustee Stokbarn.
I'm just curious, So on a good day, if you have 300 to go and things go well, how many can you do in one day?
So in the beginning, it's our intent to schedule them every hour to hour and a half. Initially, for our first week, we're looking at scheduling either a 7:30 or 8 o'clock. Some residents might want the early ones so they can get out. So then let's just say we would go 9 o'clock, 10:30, 1 o'clock, 2:30, or something similar. So that if we run into issues after a week or so, if we find out that's way too much cushion, we will shorten those timeframes, and then have another grouping of 2 utility staff waiting sort of in the wings or on standby. But if something goes sideways in a house, I can pull somebody else in to get to an appointment. I also don't want to be shuffling and rescheduling appointments. Absolutely don't want to do that. So our plan is to, generally speaking, run one installation crew with knowing of a backup.
So if things go well, but if, I don't know, are you thinking you can get finished by October?
We should be able to get finished by October, provided we're at an axe.
Sorry, one question. Are there any opportunities for after-hour work? Because there are so many renters, and so many single parents, children who are working all day long that may not be able to make a daytime appointment. Is there any opportunity at all for something to happen after hours?
I think we'll probably review that on a. I don't at this point have the ability to advertise after hours
yeah.
appointments. But if it's a real hardship, I think we can probably make arrangements for that.
But keep in mind, if it's a rental property, it's the owner that is that gets communicated with.
It is the owner that gets communicated with. Many of them have responded to me. We have some of our utility accounts have emails attached. So for the last month, it's been a lot of emails people to say, hey, we didn't get a response from you. Can we get in? And that's always to the owner. And just as often as not, they'll say, well, you need to contact my tenant to schedule this. Response is no, then you need to tell your tenant to make the point. Like, I'm not. But it goes both half a dozen to one.
Yeah, I mean, I want to.
Yeah.
I'm obviously, I totally understand not advertising, but if it came down to my water gets shut off or I have to take a day from work, I would hope that there'd be some accommodation to make.
Yeah, I think it's probably more likely we'd try to get in early than late.
Sure.
Simply because, I'm also trying to be cost conscious.
Yeah.
And, we're done at 3:30. If someone needs to do it in after work, I probably am going to have people sitting there for, at least a couple hours.
Yeah.
But if we can do it before they go to work, then I probably use a lot of.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, so this is just an update, so you don't need any. Okay. If anybody has further questions or gets comments is contacted, please forward to staff so they can coordinate. Thank you. Don't go away. 9E, consider amendment to Strand Associates Southeast Area Combined Sewer Improvements Engineering Contract. We have a memo in our packet with a proposed motion. Is there anything additional that you would like us to know before we consider this? No?
No.
Okay, it's pretty self-explanatory. Is there a motion?
Yep. So I move approval of the amendment to the Southeast Area Combined Sewer Improvement Design engineering contract with Strand Associates in the amount of $29,000 and no cents.
Second.
Motion by trustee Ursing, seconded by trustee Kudo. Any discussion? Trustee Stokbrand?
So this is a change from the original because the project changed. Because this is such a long project, could this happen again?
I don't anticipate that. Within the next couple months, they'll be moving. They probably have started, right? We'll be moving shortly into construction drawings. So we'll have a biddable project in hand, probably in the next 5 months, 4 months. So no, I do not anticipate an additional amendment.
Because this one should be done in 2024, right?
Yes, so Strand is doing construction drawings for phase 1 in 23 and phase 2 in 24. They've also done all the calculations and provided some data to Kapur for incorporation into the 26 Lake Drive project.
But that would be a separate,
Right, that'll be bid or let by the state as part of Lake Drive.
so this should be this should be it for engineering for this project.
Yes.
Thank you.
I would just like to say that I'm really glad that we're adding Downer, and I've already talked to Wisconsin Bike Fed about bike lanes within the scope of that project. So if you can make a note that it just came up because we were talking about the Lake Drive configuration and things like that. And so it was a natural kind of.
It's in the bike and ped and bike plan.
Mhm.
Just to clarify, there'd be bike accommodations.
Right.
We don't have the width for
To the bike lane.
parking and fully blown bike lane.
Exactly. So.
So it would be the current Lake Drive.
Yes, or Wilson, they're the same model. Yep.
Wilson has some dedicated though, doesn't it?
But they're not,
A lot
they're
wider.
not technically bike lanes.
Oh, they're not.
They're not wide enough to be bike lanes. They're still considered accommodation.
Oh,
Thank you for that clarification of the language. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
aye.
Any- Any opposed? All right, motion carries 6-0. Moving to 9F, consider notice of settlement of the class action against Monsanto. There's really no, well, there is action to take. This could have gone under consent agenda, but because this doesn't happen every day, I just thought it would be good for us to have a briefing from the attorney. So make sure there are no questions. Attorney Bear.
Thank you. I tried to set the memo up in a way that posed questions I thought you might all have concerning what is this class action? How does it work? How do we get paid and those kind of things? So I tried to anticipate what all the questions might be, but I don't want to go through the entire memo again. I think it might be better just to make a few brief comments about in general, and then answer any questions that you might have. To a certain extent, this is sort of like money falling out of the sky to a certain extent. Monsanto was a manufacturer of particular chemical that made its way into rivers and streams and lakes and water aquifers all over the country. And the way that these class actions work is some lawyers sign up a few initial specific plaintiffs, and they file suit in federal court, and then they petition the court and they say, hey, we believe that there are other similarly situated individuals, not only in this state of California, but around the country. And we would like the right to petition on all of their collective behalves. And because it serves judicial economy by litigating this once rather than 9,450 times across the country. So there's a specific set of criteria. They first have to convince the court that, yeah, there are other similarly situated individuals that we're going to pursue this on behalf of. The court's already said, yes, that's true. And then they've gone through a second process of identifying municipalities that potentially would be plaintiffs. And then what they do is they send this notice saying, hey, you're part of this class. You've probably gotten these if you had a particular credit card, or if you bought particular product, it happens with products liability all the time. You buy something that might have been defective, and you get something in the mail that says you can opt out. And what it means to opt out is to say, well, we're going to go it on our own because we don't like the portion of the settlement that's been attributed to us. And in this particular case, opting out would undoubtedly, in my mind, encompass probably tens of thousands of dollars in expert costs and fees over, I'd probably conservatively estimate 3 to 4 to potentially 5 years. And then you don't know what's at the end of the rainbow. I guess is like the old classic game show, what's behind the curtain number 2 over here. And I might be nothing. It might be $1 million. I can't tell you. But I did talk to, there's a local attorney here that's a Shorewood resident as well, Andrew Spiarski. Some of you probably know Andrew. He's one of the ice captains here. Very involved in the community. And his firm is probably going to be representing Milwaukee. Because under the formula, I think Milwaukee got like $3,800, but Milwaukee County got like $1.6 million. So I don't know exactly how any of that. I didn't dig into the formula, but Andy ran the numbers, and then they shared with the local municipalities. If you participate in the settlement, here's how much you get under the formula. And if anybody's interested in opting out, they can call us.
So Attorney Bayer, this
sure.
number, is this the number you came up with or that?
Well,
law?
I started to run through the formulas based upon the information that I was able to download. And I talked to Andy's firm, and I talked to him for a good half an hour, and they ran the numbers through their team with their paralegals. And I had chicken scratched out about 120 to 130, just looking at the formulas, and they had done it down to the penny. And he's told me that he gave me all the numbers for all the North Shore communities. Glendale's getting slightly more. Whitefish Bay is in the same range. River Hills is getting $13,700. So it's kind of all over, but a lot of them are kind of in that same range. And so his firm, because they were pitching potential, if anybody wants to opt out, we could represent you, kind of a deal. And so they, according to, they ran it down to the penny, and he tells me it's $133,471.
So if I make this motion, how soon could we get the money?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't.
Looking at the budget.
Yeah. That's a great question. I wish I could tell you exactly, but there's a process that will happen now. By July 25th, what will happen is any community that opts out will have to let the court know in California. And then once that's done, they'll probably look at, okay, how many opt-outs do we have? And then let's settle. Let's take the 534 million or whatever it was collectively that they're paying and divvy it up between the communities that are not opting out based on the formula. And
could the number change based on how many people?
Yeah, we might. I mean, it's July now. Is there a chance that we could get a check by early 2023? Yeah, it's possible.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Other questions? I would entertain a motion. Trustee Stokely?
I move to do nothing in regard to the notice of settlement of the class action against Monsanto.
Second.
I'm imagining there's no further discussion. All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Could I ask a clarifying question? So
Yes.
just so by the motion to do nothing essentially is to participate by accepting the class action settlement. Okay.
Mhm.
Does that need to be in the motion?
No,
or- Okay.
We have that.
Mike.
Yeah, that's what.
Thank you.
The money and run.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Moving on, I'm getting a little slap happy. You can tell it's almost 9. Okay. 9G, consider ordinance 3046, an ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 100-1, posting of official public notices of the Shorewood Village Code. So this comes to us as an administrative / housekeeping measure as a result of various changes over time, and we are coming into compliance or aligning the language of code and state statute, and reflecting updated technology and practice. And this is coming to us from the village manager's or the clerk's office. The village manager can speak to it, and it's I really appreciate it, and it's coming out of, having fresh eyes and alignment of things. So is there anything additional, Manager Ewald, that you would like to add before? No. Okay. There is a recommended motion. Yes?
I was just gonna make the motion.
That was I, but
Why don't you go
Jim,
for
do you
it?
have a question? No. We're all fighting to make the motion.
Yep,
Oh,
all yours.
I move to approve ordinance 3046, repealing and replacing chapter 100-1, posting of official public notices of the Shorewood Village Code.
Second.
All right. Motion by trustee Kudo, seconded by trustee Arndorfer. Any discussion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote.
Trustee Arndorfer,
Aye.
trustee Ursink,
Aye.
trustee Kudo,
Aye.
trustee Lynn,
Aye.
trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
president McCaig.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're on to the last item of new business, 9H, consider 2023 staff work plans and proposed village board initiatives. There's a memo in our packet explaining that of all the initiatives that were submitted, there are only 2 that require board consideration this evening. And let's see, I want to move to that page. They're both presented by trustee Stokbrand. There is in the memo comment and recommendation from staff or comments from staff. At this time, I can hand it over to, so basically just the motion that is recommended is to adopt the 2023 staff work plans with and move forward, proceed with, or to not proceed with either or both of the additional initiatives that we will be discussing this evening. So I will hand it over to trustee Stokbrand to, why don't we take one at a time? We'd like to hear from you.
Okay, so this
Or
is
if
my-
there's, you don't have to.
well, it's the first time I've proposed initiatives. Quite honestly, when Arthur and I, trustee Ursink and I were first elected, the village had its hands full. It was COVID, and then there was civil unrest, and so it didn't seem critical at the time. And I think, honestly, a couple of these, one of them is something from last December, but the code of ethics thing is actually an initiative that trustee Warren had proposed in May of 2020, creation of a code of, and I think I should have put code of ethics. He has a code of conduct. And I think it's sort of in the same vein. And in 2020, he had said, this is already on the village's roadmap, but I also wanted to submit for prioritization since the code of conduct / ethics acts as both a guideline for elected officials and staff, and is also meant to underlie a lot of the policies that we have worked on over the last couple of years. So this is really resurrecting something that he was hoping to move forward with, and that I think just because of the situation at the time, we didn't move forward on it. But I agree with him that it's important. And as I noted in the information that I submitted, that it basically is to improve the integrity and the confidence and trust that residents can have in their village government. And he had put, I think, he didn't exactly put JP&L, but that to me seemed like a logical place to start. And I understand that staff has said that they, we're trying to reduce the number of committees we have. That's actually, I know that one of the examples pointed out was Parks and Public Spaces. I'm the liaison for that. We actually went from 2 committees to 3 with that because we went from a Parks Commission and a Bike and Ped Safety, and now we have 1 committee, but we have 3 subcommittees. We have a Parks, Open Spaces, and we have Bike and Ped Safety. So I understand what Manager Ewald was saying, but it's not actually the direction that we've taken. And I think if you see something that would make the village, it would help us with our integrity, and that's why I'm proposing it. And I think it at least deserves to be vetted through a committee instead of having staff decide what we should do. I mean, I think it's up to decide what we want to do. I understand staff has a lot of commitments. This would probably mostly affect the people on that. I'm on JP. Sorry. And Melissa and Art. And it would probably, there are other code of ethics out there, code of conduct that we could use. Obviously, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So that's my thinking on that one.
So, yeah, so just let's think procedurally here so we don't get going sideways. So we have the option of, we could take these one at a time and then make it part of a bigger motion if you want to, just to give direction, or we can have Trustee Stokebrand present both at the time, both initiatives, and then discuss them, see where people are, and then make a motion.
I just have a couple of questions based on this.
Okay, let's
one.
take them one at a time then for
that all right?
discussion purposes.
I think my biggest question here is, well, I think when Trustee Warren was talking about a code of ethics, I'm not quite sure he was talking about forming a board. I mean, do you have, so I think we were going through a lot of big issues at the time with our board, which have, been, I think, remarkably cleaned up in the past couple of years. But I'm thinking, like, when I look at this, who ideally would be on a board of an ethics committee? Because I think there's, whoever you pick, there could be a lot of, personal and political conflicts within that particular board. So who would be, in your mind, sit on the board of ethics?
I guess it would be similar to someone sitting on the design review board, or, I think that, if someone sees a conflict, you do, well, some of us would point out the conflict of interest and recuse ourselves. I'm not necessarily wedded to the idea of a board, but I do think if you had the code of conduct or the code of ethics, then something could be, an alleged violation could be brought to JP&L. You may not need to have a board of ethics, or you could use JP&L.
I think, I'd be more interested in discussing that, but I think a board, looking at the Human Relations Committee, looking at a lot of our boards right now, they have a hard time making quorum. And, I think a board like this could further political sort of personal strife in our small community. I think it would be a very challenging thing to find the right mix of people that could hold all of us independently up to a certain sort of ethical sort of benchmark. But, if there's, so I just have a problem with that. I think it'd be very difficult to find a group of people that would be able to serve on this appropriately.
Well, keep in mind that the task at hand tonight is to decide whether you want this initiative to move forward.
Got you. Yeah.
And if it does move forward, then something else needs to step aside.
And I would say, with the amount that we still have on our plate, because even though, the pandemic was one thing, we still have a long laundry list of items. I don't see this as being a high priority for us right now.
Yeah, so it's more of a question of kind of prioritization rather than we're not
Gotcha.
going to have all those questions answered
Yep.
tonight, right? Nobody would. Trustee Kudo?
I mean, I feel supremely confident that something like this could go to JPL and best can have a discussion of what direction you want to go and bring it back forward. But I think this is just a matter of, does it go to committee and is it thoroughly discussed and, and what have you at your discretion or Trustee Baldorf's discretion, and then comes back to the board. I don't see a reason to kill it here. It's something else to discuss. It's certainly, I mean, ethics, I think, are something that earlier iterations of this board have run into problems with, depending on who you ask, on what day, what time of day. And so, on both sides of whatever political aisle exists. So I think having the discussion, I have no problem with that. And then, if fine folks come up with some ideas and bring it back to the board, then we can pick it up or kill it or whatever. I mean, whatever we want to do with it.
How do, if we vote then, I mean, I think there'd be some, I could get there, but how does this change,
Let's hold that procedurally
Okay.
and then I'd like to hear from everyone before we ask that procedural question. I appreciate it. Mhm.
I mean, I would not be in favor of having this one proceed at this point. I mean, what I'm looking at here seems, I mean, a code of conduct is one thing, a code of ethics and a creation of an ethics board is something else entirely. I do have concerns about politicization, body being forum for that. I was not on the board, but I remember great fondness following the creation of the social media code of conduct, which sucked up an incredible amount of time with very little result. I just have concerns. I mean, I think it's worth an ongoing conversation, but from where we're at right now, that's
Mhm. Trustee Lynn?
I'd be okay discussing it on JP&L, just to make sure we thoroughly, vet all of the options. That being said, with the knowledge that this board already is elected, which is its own sort of check and balance. And, so I'm cautious to then create an unelected board to do what to the elected, to tell the elected board to do what. I don't, so I mean, that's the part I'm cautious about, but I think if JP&L, on a next upcoming meeting or whenever that is, we can talk this through. I think another, at that time, I'd be happy to do that. But I don't think it's something we necessarily need to all say we have to do today, because I don't think there's enough to push it through today necessarily.
Trustee Stokbrand?
I just have one final thing to say. You don't need a code of ethics until you need it and a code of conduct. So I guess this it's preemptive. And I guess it would be my comment would be, we've been in the situation where two trustees have thought that we needed this. And I believe, now I don't know what the vote was taken anyway, but the point is to have it in place. So if you need it, you've got it and you've got a means.
So I'm hearing two options. I don't hear any full support for creating a board of like the way that this, excuse me, to the point of the way that this initiative is presented. I want to make sure I have the right one. What page is this one on?
192.
Thank you. Create a code of ethics and ethics board. So taking the initiative as it's presented. I'm hearing JP&L could discuss it and come back with a recommendation as to whether to create it. but I'm not hearing anybody say, yeah, JP&L should go ahead with creating a board. So I'm a little, so procedurally, Manager Ewald, well,
And I would just like, I'm willing to, would be happy to change my initiative to make it investigate the possible creation of a code of ethics / conduct. 'Cause that's what Trustee Warren, I mean, is there a problem? Are you saying you would only move forward with the initiative as I wrote it at the
well, that's what
time?
I would just want to be clear about what we
Because I
are being asked. to do.
we can be I'm flexible. I mean, if there's a,
Mhm. Well, and also I think the memo outlines that even the investigation, that still is a direction to staff and it would still need to be scheduled. And it's not that it can't be, but we need to be clear about what it is that we're asking for. And then if the recommendation came back as, yes, we've investigated, and we think the best thing to do is to create this board, then we're back 3 months down the road, which is again, okay. I just want to be clear about it, that if we're kicking a can, that we know what the can is.
I
So-
think Trustee Silverbrand is saying she would take out the board element of this.
Okay.
But then at the same time, we do have a village attorney that can advise us to ethical concerns through trustees, right?
Which
I mean,
he does.
which he does, so I think we have that as an option that we're already invested in. But to create a code of conduct and ethics, what kind of undertaking is that? Like,
It
I mean,
is-
from a legal perspective, from like how much time and energy are we going to put into creating that?
as I
Well, I do know-
explained, there's already, the city of Madison has one, Middleton has one.
So we
you
just
would-
copy and paste those and move
Well,
on?
I would think you'd use due diligence to make sure that you had language that fits your municipality. But you wouldn't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel. This has been done before in other Wisconsin municipalities. I think it would be noteworthy if Shorewood is one of the first of our size to do it.
Again,
Trustee Kudo.
I trust. If we give general direction, that this is something that ethics code of conduct is something that we're interested in discussing. I trust Trustee Baldoff to take that, have using her expertise, having a conversation with Village Manager Ewald, President McKay, Trustee Stokebrand, and say, this is kind of what I'm thinking. This is my committee. I'm the chair of this committee. This is what I'm going to bring to the committee. This is what we're going to discuss. Like, I don't want to micromanage her committee, especially when she's here. So, just giving her a general direction. Obviously, Trustee Stokebrand has been more than willing to amend what her initiative says specifically, but Melissa to take a look at it and decide what she wants to do on her.
Okay, so going back to Manager Ewald, what is, that still is time, which again, I know that you're not opposed to. But from what you're hearing, what does this sound like to you? What's the feedback and we haven't taken a vote, so.
So it's really a matter of scheduling. We go on a first in, first out basis. So if you want this to stand in front of something, then you need to tell me it needs to stand in front of something else that's already in queue.
Do you have that? I mean, do you have a rough idea of what the queue looks like for the next 6 months to a year?
I mean, when you're talking about JP&L, and I'm going to preface this with what I'm hearing is that Melissa is going to come to the committee with.
I just don't feel, I don't feel it appropriate for me to
Information.
say, this is the number 1 item or the number 5 item I think Melissa's committee should take up. And we made this decision tonight when Trustee Baldoff's not here, and she has to do what the group said, what the group says when she gets back. I would much rather her have a conversation with the two of you and decide where she wants to put this. And then she can, defend her position, or she can, I'll be good with it. Like, I don't know, but I just don't want to tell her what to do without her being here.
Would it be worthwhile to defer something like this into?
Well,
a
I
in
think
future meeting?
actually we could, so I'll let Manager Ewald finish and then I'm gonna propose something.
I would just put it in queue on the items of future items of consideration from the board. That's it.
So do we know
It would go,
where
it would
would
fall next
go,
in line. So there are some items that are listed ahead of that and it would fall next in line.
that are
and-
JP&L.
Correct. Right now, there's not sufficient staff to get to all of those committees, so I am the one doing the majority of your committee work.
So where's the JP&L list? What page is that on?
That's, we don't have that. She has it in her.
Nope, it's listed
That's-
right within
oh,
your board
with the-
packet.
Oh, because of the
It's
work
on page
plans.
196, and there's the 2021, 2022 Village Board Future Items of Consideration. That's where we track this. So at the last meeting, you'll see that we got done with holiday decorations. Next,
Maybe.
we'll be moving to discuss group organization transparency policy. One of the dynamics that you don't see is that I'm still backlogged on the clerk's work coming forward on different ordinance updates that are needed to get done from permits. So this just reflects the board's initiatives and things that the board has said, when it's available to be scheduled, we want to list these.
So where are the clerk updates that you have to do? I don't understand where
I'm
those.
working on them now. We and scheduled.
So they're
them-
on the list here somewhere?
No, this is your village board. Future items of consideration. What I'm suggesting is that you treat the code of ethics as a future item of consideration and that it be listed after discuss bubbler and multimodal transportation initiatives on the SI committee.
Well, but don't we get to pick our own priorities?
I'm not suggesting to.
You know
pick
what,
your
I'm gonna
priorities.
let's wrap this up.
Yeah,
I'm
about to-
So,
just,
yeah, she
I'm
gave
being
you.
asked
I'm gonna-
for a mode
I'll
that's
do that
easy
one.
to go through here. I previously in the discussion already referenced if there is a point of where that wants to be inserted in between them, feel free to do that this evening. Typically, when we list future agenda items of consideration, we do so and we put them at the back end of that list. Because we click through the list and start one thing and then move to the next. If that's not the desire of this board, that doesn't need to be the protocol, but this reflects the board's list and not necessarily the work plans that encompass other work that need to get done. So I don't want you to be led astray that this is the only things coming up next for purposes of committees. And I'm also reflecting that because I would be involved in that code of ethics, I'm still working through prior agenda items that needed to come through JP&L and business and community relations that were prior assigned to the clerk last year. So I'm just recognizing some of those changes because we had a clerk leave, we had an assistant manager leave, I had some unfortunate family circumstances, and now we're coming back to do that work. There are no rights or wrong. I'm here to administer the direction provided. I'm just being clear about different ways that we can go about this moving forward.
At this point, I'd like to take a vote or a show of hands because we have two options. One, to assign this discussion to JP&L, or to not move forward with it at this time. So I would like to, is there a motion? Well, why don't we just say, is there a motion to proceed with assigning this as a discussion item to JP&L as a future item of consideration?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. Motion by trustee Stokbrand, seconded by trustee Kudo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
No. So it's a 3-3, so motion fails.
Well, can I,
Oh.
I just didn't hear, I was typing, I
Oh.
wasn't looking up, so I don't know which one. of you
Oh,
guys
yeah.
did. We
So
could just
the
vote.
ayes, trustee Lynn, trustee Stokbrand, trustee Kudo, and the nays are trustee Arndorfer, trustee Ursink, and President McCaig. It's a 3-3, so it fails. Is that accurate?
And just this can come up next year and next year's initiatives. It just for me, it sounds like we have a lot on our plate right now, and this isn't a high priority. So I think it can definitely come up next year and something that I'd love to talk about. But as it stands right now, let's get through our list first.
But we can, I mean,
think,
but this can also come up as an item of future
it can.
consideration.
Mhm.
And then when trustee Baldoff is here, then we can figure out which way the majority will.
Good point.
But that said, in an interim, if I may make a request, it seems like since we do have a new board, just a review of what natural checks and balances, compliance, guiding statute. I mean, we have statute that guides us. We have a legal counsel that guides us. So there actually is, if this is about elected officials, we can do a list of all the mechanisms that are in place in statute and how those progress. So we can do that I would think that we would be able to prepare that for staff to consider. Mhm.
Wanted to mention, you've been reading in the paper. Obstacles. Employee meetings that are
Right. Mhm.
read the paper.
Okay.
They're literally.
I mean, but that sounds like something that could potentially be appropriate for JP&L to discuss. What,
Future.
you give them that primary.
Yeah,
All right,
and, you know, I'm just saying, I'm not opposed to discussing it. I just think we are, from listening to Manager Ewald, we're just backlogged a little bit, and I don't think we get to that discussion in anytime soon. So, but once we get there, once we get through some of this stuff, I'm more than happy to take that up and discuss that.
Mhm. All right, good discussion. So second trustee initiative, trustee Stokebrand, the charter ordinance.
Yeah, I feel like there's not enough support. Staff doesn't want to do this, and so I think I'm.
I haven't seen any comments that reflected that staff did not want to do this. Noted within the scope of the memo, nor in another discussion. So I just want to be clear with that feedback.
Well, the last two paragraphs in the memo talk about, how you don't have, there's not. And so, it's the last item on the agenda. It comes up at 9 o'clock. I guess it.
So I'd be happy to address the paragraph that I wrote, which did not say that staff is unwilling to work on this item. It clearly states that we would reshuffle the order of priority for work.
Mhm. Yeah, I
And
don't, I
there's-
disagree with your premise of, and so I just need us to hold each other accountable to, we can interpret things, but to state that as a fact would be incorrect.
It was also listed at this place on the agenda to allow other staff to leave and go home because this is an item that did not require their participation. And there is no other assertion for listing it in the spot other than that.
And just to be clear, is this on the question of requiring approval of appointments by the board? So if the president approves, that's what you were looking at? If the president makes an appointment, the board should approve it?
So this is based upon last December, I believe it was, the minutes are a little confusing but December 20th of 2021. Consider amendments to a charter ordinance. Trustee Arndorfer introduced the item. seconded by me to direct staff to explore drafting a charter ordinance that reinstates the requirements village president's appointments to the plan commission be subjected to village board approval. And I don't see it on the list of items for future. So I don't know.
Would you like to discuss this initiative or are you withdrawing it?
I'll discuss it. I
Okay.
shouldn't it have been on the list of items for future consideration?
If that was in the motion, we can definitely add it to the list. I'm not sure why it's not listed on there, but I would happy to list it on there.
Sure. Can you list it on there? That would be great.
I would be happy to, trustee Stokebrand.
The other three items I really thought were worthy of discussion besides being just having the staff input. I thought it would have been helpful for, I know you have in your business plan communication, but I think it would be helpful if the Community and Business Relations Committee had an opportunity to weigh in on your communications plan, which I think, so far we've talked about digitizing the minutes and I think property documents. I guess I'm looking at a bigger policy-wide decision that I think needs to be made at the board level and starting with the Community and Business Relations about how do we improve communication in this village with residents. And I know you have your plan and it's in front of us. I'm just wondering when and how and where trustee input is involved in it.
We would actually be coming back with a framework for moving forward with that following approval of the work plans. We conclude initiatives, then we work plan the item, and then they come forward. So that's something that I'll be working on with Chris, and Chris is actually going to be leading that scope of the project.
So will a committee be involved or will
Yes,
it'll just
I'm
come at
sure.
staff recommendations?
I'm sure that there may be multiple groups involved.
Because I would think trustee Kudo should be integral.
Yeah, we have a lot of expertise on the board. And so if you'll recall, when you've had suggestions for ways of additional communication opportunities that have not been resourced, we've said that's part of we really need to look at what our resource and capacity is for communications, what our expectations are. And if those are going to change, then we have to resource and set capacity at a different level. And we need to be held accountable as a board as far as what that direction means in terms of, line items in a budget. So it might be that we go through this exercise and there's tweaks. And so it's like, we're doing the same amount, but in a different way. And so we're leveraging different opportunities. We did that last year with trustee Baldoff and I believe the marketing committee. We can do it again. Again, it might come back and with all the input, it's like, we're doing it's the same capacity, but we're doing it in a different way and we're leveraging different opportunities. Or it could come back and the opportunity and the feedback is, wow, you know what, we are staffed to do this amount, but what we're really hearing is we want this amount. And so then that becomes a bigger discussion and that takes time to do. So that's why it was held until new assistant village manager came on board. And then that's how this is presented.
So, I mean, I'll just say it as chair of the potential committee where this might land. Okay. I mean, I would just, I know this assistant village manager first run through this. Obviously, it's my first run through this. So, if we could have a little grace to just, let staff work through the process, I would like to see thoughts, what the plan is, and then, if there need to be adjustments, whatever, and obviously, as village manager Paul said, could come before Community and Business Relations, you could come before another committee, sort of take that when it gets to us. But I think I agree that not necessarily recently, but in years past, there's been communication calls from the village to the resident. I've heard it, I've talked about it, but I'll take it on. It's on me. So the committee, happy to do work to figure out what works best for staff, what works best for the villagers. Take it back to the take it back to the board and get vote and input and have you. But I don't want to stop their process, hurt myself to it. I trust that there'll be an appropriate time. Staff will be able to say, we've got something that we've got something committee. Just recognize that there is desire for the part of that process at the appropriate time. But I don't, so it's an important initiative to me, but again, I don't go down to do it. Let me know when. Oh,
Yeah, I think we're all in the same, I think we want the same thing. And the point is that there is a proposal of how to move forward with that. And I think if there are additional expectations of specific ways that, that you want to see that happen, I think now's the time to provide that insight, but input, but this is already scheduled and it's for 2023. So we've got some time.
Not opposed to tackling it sooner.
If that becomes, well, these are,
literally has nothing that I know of. So,
well, these are trustees, this is initiatives for 2023 anyway. So if it can, I think it's on your work plan for remainder of this year. So it probably will come forward, rather than if we took it as a 2023 trustee initiative, it would, not begin till then.
sure.
So
I'm just saying if staff gets to it, and
exactly.
we can move on it in 22.
I think
we
the
don't have to
plan,
wait.
that's my point, is that the
Yeah.
plan is that we are going to look at it this year. It's part of a work plan already. If it's determined in that process that something more is wanted and desired, then we can look at how we pursue that. If it exceeds our capacity and it also, if something changes and that's a budget change, then that needs to be part of the budget discussion. So I don't see them as mutually exclusive at all. Okay, so we need a motion to approve the work plans. The charter ordinance, no, you wanted to withdraw it? What did you want to do about the charter? Nobody made a motion, I don't think, about the charter ordinance.
I thought it was already. I thought. something
Yeah, I don't
happened.
think that it's necessary because trustee Stokebrand has
future-
advised us that it was not listed appropriately
Oh,
in future
that's
items. of
future item, right.
consideration.
So we don't have to go back to that. Okay, so
Correct.
now we
Unless
need a
there's more
motion.
information that I'm missing.
We need a motion to approve the work plans because we've addressed both of the trustee initiatives.
So we're going to move forward and not proceed, right?
Correct.
Move forward and not.
That is based on the votes that we've taken so far. Mhm. Or
Okay.
the action that's occurred during this discussion. It's a motion to approve the work plans as presented.
Okay, well, I move to confirm the 2022, 2023 initiatives as identified in the staff work plans and not proceed with creation of an ethics committee and creating a village charter. Does that make sense?
Ordinance.
Charter ordinance.
Point of clarification. I thought the charter ordinance thing had already been taken care of. That's already past where we are right now. And it just get put on a list somewhere.
Well,
I don't-
that's what I thought I heard trustee
Okay.
Stokebrand say.
So friendly amendment to remove that
can go
from the
back and
Yeah, I
motion.
think
look
it's
at
just the first.
Just the first one.
first
Yep.
one.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Stokebrand, what was the date of the minutes that you were referencing?
December 20th of 2021.
Okay, December 20th of 2021.
Yep. You want me to, am I reading that in here?
No, I think that
I think what I'm hearing is that your motion was good with the exception of referencing a charter ordinance.
Did you want me to include that date in the charter or? in the-
No, I
Okay,
just wanted to make
okay.
sure the
Yep.
date so that we pulled that.
I
Fantastic.
think it already.
Yep.
From what I
So just a friendly amendment to remove creating a village charter.
I don't know to get a second.
I don't even
yet.
think, yeah, okay.
All right, are we clear on the motion?
No. Do you want me to reread the motion without that last part in it?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, fantastic. I move to confirm the 2022, 2023 initiatives as identified in the staff work plans and not proceed with the creation of an ethics committee.
Is there a second? Okay. Motion by trustee Ursink, seconded by trustee Arndorfer. Any discussion? Trustee Stokbrand.
So I know there's a big push to move forward with the DPW looking at another site, right? We voted on that earlier. Is that in the work plan? The work plan does say 2023. It doesn't say 2022, the one that I've got in the. So if you don't have time to do a lot of things, but you do have time to look at the DPW, another location, you and Leanne. I don't see it in the work plan.
I'll let the board entertain that.
Yeah.
Should it be in there? I'm
not finding your question. I mean, I'm going to take it as rhetorical.
It's not. Is DPW site selection off-site supposed to be part of the work plan?
Well, isn't that already on
Mhm.
their plate because we just voted on it
Yeah.
earlier? So it
We
doesn't need
have-
to be part of a separate list of plans?
Mhm.
Well, typically, all the major priorities are in the work plan, aren't they?
I think it's safe to say that with the investment that we have acknowledged, staff has brought forward to us that this is a priority. We have had direction from participation from the Committee of Public Works. We have had several meetings on addressing the needs of the Department of Public Works facility. That ball is in motion. So whether or not you're finding it where you need to find it, it is there and it is not. I need to know what your need is around this discussion for the motion that's on the floor.
Point of information, I think.
Okay. So that's the information that I have for you this evening. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
I,
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Okay. Trustee Stokbrand, trustee Kudo, nay, trustee Lynn, trustee Arndorfer, trustee Ursink, and President McCaig, aye. All right, that concludes new business. Moving on to item 10, reports of village officials. I will be brief. In the packet, I provided a summary of comments that I have had and conversation that I've had with the school board regarding addressing racism and within the scope of doing equity, diversity, and inclusion work. That's been part of a public conversation. I welcome any of the trustees of the village board to be part of that as well. And I will continue to communicate on that conversation, and any meetings that occur as a result will be noticed. Item, yes.
I didn't really understand this one, to be totally honest with you.
Mhm.
Were you?
I can, yes,
Can you just sort of give me
walk you through it.
the broad strokes
I'll
of
try.
what it is and is this a village resident board thing? Is this citizen thing? I don't
Yeah,
know.
so it is.
I mean, I read the
um,
transcript.
Yeah. So I attended their meeting as village board president and as a partner. Because this is an issue that I am committed to as well, and that we plan to proceed. And so their ability to, I look at the school district as several years ahead of us in terms of because they have adopted a strategic plan and vision for equity. They're a couple of years of investing into it. They are experiencing what commonly happens when these initiatives move forward, is that, that you hit points of resistance, you hit points of pushback, concern, and those will be the same ones that we encounter as we go on our path as well. And we've already encountered those in the community in different ways. And so my intention is to work as a partner. I'm not speaking on behalf of the board. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as village president and offering myself as a partner in this work. So in the event that I think that there's no reason why one entity in the community, whether it's a group or a classroom or a taxing district or a business, if they're trying to make change and they're struggling with it, there's no reason why it's not different than anybody else. So that's my intention, and that's how. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean,
It's probably more information than you wanted.
I appreciate it. It was sort of like is this a board thing that you're doing on behalf of all of us, or is this?
Yeah, I would never do
yours?
that. That's why.
That's
yeah.
what I just didn't get from the
Yeah.
transcript. That's
So
why
I wanted to
asked.
bring it back because it started, in between. I went to them, and then, from having conversations around wanting to partner I think that there's that point at which, you do kind of racism 101, equity 101, and then it gets into just more living in everyday life and how you handle things. And so that's where the school district is, that's where we will be. And so working together to build those communication lines, we can begin with the by board and as an idea and bring things back, but I don't see anything that requires board action at this time. So simply it's an invitation also. So that's that. Yes.
Just on the topic of buy board, is when does that traditionally happen?
It happens as we don't have a schedule, and it has fallen by the wayside because of demand.
Because I feel maybe this is something for future consideration, but I do feel like a strong connection with our school board is probably very appropriate. And I would love to know more about what happened and their process with, the administrators at the school district and how they work through that and what's going on, because I feel like we've been left in the dark, but we're also such a huge partner in this community. We need each other, and it would be nice to hear what happened and how we can learn from that.
So that's great feedback. So I guess I'll offer the same thing. I'm happy to meet one-on-one with anyone, or we can schedule it as an item of discussion at a board meeting. If I will defer to the board on that, but anything that you would like to hear from the school board, or we've talked about having joint meetings in the past, and we were focused around in the by board, we were focused around doing something in coordinating, budget discussions and long range plan discussions. And then it just got to be, there were too many demands and too many things happening. And so, but I'm happy. I mean, what you make me realize is that we haven't done a report on the board, but by board since our board changed and since elections. And that would be really, I think, a good step to take. Yes, Trustee Stokebrand.
I believe after the last by board report, I requested that at the next by board meeting, we get a report about the school district enrollment. And so I don't know whatever happened with that.
We didn't follow up. We haven't had a meeting. So it was brought forward as a list. We developed a list of, why don't, for our next meeting, I'll do a report on the Bible, or Trustee Yondorfer. We can do a summary of what we did last year and where we left off.
Yeah, I mean, we had some good preliminary conversations. We did actually have.
We identified 3 or 4 things,
Yeah.
that being one of them.
we
And
had
then
decent
think
work
people in the
product coming out
community
of
are
that
extremely-
meeting. And then, yeah, to your point, life
People in the
happened,
village are
we were
extremely
not able-
concerned about the enrollment.
Mhm.
They're
Yep,
concerned about a lot of
everybody
things, you know?
Yeah. So thank you. I don't want to expand out, we're not scheduled for that, but I appreciate the questions and I'm certainly happy to schedule more time in a future meeting. So,
I
and
would appreciate
certainly
that.
you would like that?
Yeah, I mean, I was clearly not part of any of those. And so how they work, how we interact with them, I would get educated on.
Excellent. All right, we'll figure out how to do that. I mean, not that it's hard, but, all right, moving on through reports. Dominion property ribbon cutting for the solar wall. Trustee Baldoff and I both attended. It's a pretty exciting project. I met with Judge Kirschner, our municipal judge. We have had 2 annual meetings, and it's just a time to talk about branches of government and sort of how things are going on either side. She talked a lot about the process of trying to do a shared court clerk and the challenges with that and staff turnover. And I invited her to come and introduce herself to the village board at a future date. And she suggested maybe during the budget process, since she does submit a budget. And then finally, I don't have much of a statement on the Supreme Court of the United States rulings, but just acknowledging that it is a really sensitive time. There's a lot going on, not just with the courts, but, there might be more and more concern falling to the state, county, and local levels. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I just wanted to acknowledge that it is a sensitive time and, that may impact us in one way or another. So that's all I wanted to say. I can hand it off to 10B, reports of village trustees. Is anybody?
I thought the bike, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I attended a court session in, I think it was April or May. I also did a walk along with Sergeant Patterlick on June 25th, and I toured the DPW facility on June 30th. And I wanted to thank staff for their help.
That's great.
I'm working to set up a time to visit Boulevard Police Department and do a tour. I've done a tour, but do a ride along. I might do a full shift, see how crazy I get. But I just wanted to say, I thought the bike race went off perfectly. It was a great night. Everyone seemed to enjoy it. Obviously, DPW put a lot of work into putting up barricades. Or police department was great, making sure that everything was safe. So I just wanted to say kudos to both departments and village. I don't know how you guys do what you do there, but it went off perfectly. So
And the bid. Yeah. It's all about the bid.
The bid minus Arthur. Thank
Okay,
you.
right. Okay, any other reports, village officials? Okay, manager report.
Sure. For those of you who aren't aware, Public Works Committee made a recommendation on the North Oakland Avenue design. So that's going to be coming back to this group on August 1st. Wanted to update you that after our last meeting, not our last meeting, the meeting before that, we had AVN who diagnosed that it was not user error with respect to the system, but that they think that they updated the system with the newest patch. And unlike our regular home computers, sometimes when you update it and it's such a new update, it doesn't recognize that all the rest of the devices that's being used with it are not up to that same level of capacity. So this system has a lot of drivers, different connection points that get plugged into it. So different computers will trigger different responses. So they were good with coming in and taking a look at it. We tested on 4 different types of computers with different software. So things have been running smoothly. Chris is going to be running the next meeting with you, but we're going to continue to monitor and see how that works. Last wanted to provide an update on IT services. We're currently contracting with the Village of Bayside who is also providing IT services to the city of Glendale, as well as the Bayside Communication Center, 911. And previously in the village's history, we've really only allocated 4 hours. For the last 3 years, we've allocated 8 hours of IT time, which has really been more of a break fix model. So there's been no proactive planning or attention to our IT needs, but really just on a something's broke and then struggle to go address the most immediate issue at hand. The amount of tickets or quotes for service that we have are far in excess of what 8 hours takes for purposes of our municipality. So Bayside is not looking to continue with us at those hours stated. So they have come back just recently with some different options. If you'll recall, we went out for proposals on IT well, no, most of all, I don't think any of you were here, but we went, we went out for proposals on IT services, and Bayside was the lowest cost at that point in time. And so we're going to be Chris and I will be going back to regroup to the drawing board to see how we proceed. Given the point that we are in the year and the need to give them 90 days notice of execution, it's likely that we may execute an RFP in the next 2 weeks. So you would, receive notification of that by way of the village managers Friday update to letting you know that that's what we've done. Just so that we can get that executed because of the lack of the second meeting here in July and then in August. So I think the pathway forward with IT for most communities, and we are no different, is to be more proactive in how we framework and focus our needs, because break fix has not worked well for our organization. And should we also choose to move away from Bayside, private vendors, while they do a good job, they aren't necessarily focused on, that their focus is more of a business model of making money on the work that they do with us and providing and recommending solutions that are advantageous to that end. One of the benefits of working with Bayside in the past is that they're looking to cover their costs and their staff in order to deploy those services. They also provide all of the services to that sync with the police department from a dispatching mode, everything that's in a squad, everything that goes through radio. So they're a little bit more up to speed, whereas we spend more in trying to need to then communicate with a different vendor to plug in, to do some of those ordinary IT tasks that from a private company side, they need to then learn all of Bayside's protocols and backpedal. So it's pretty nuanced. I think it's fair to say that in the last 3 years, particularly with COVID, IT has become, it was beforehand, we didn't provide a lot of attention with it, but I think it's become an even greater need, because if that's not working, we don't have an ability to work, no differently than all of you. So we're going to be taking a look at that, but I would expect to see increases specifically in that line item, so that we can increase and assess how that's working and where we go from.
So do we want to stay with Bayside or not?
I'm not sure yet.
And so, but they want us to do more than 8 hours a week.
Mhm.
And right now we don't, but we don't need more than 8 hours.
We will need more than 8 hours.
So maybe we
So-
could stay with them.
Right, so I'm wondering, how will this come up on a future agenda, since this is just a report?
Great. You're either going to see it by me notifying you that we've released an RFP, just to maybe test the market in July, and then you'd either see the results come back from that, or you'll be hearing from us coming back in August with a proposal from Bayside in order to continue services.
So that would be on our August 1st agenda.
Correct.
Okay, so it sounds like that'll be the next step and point of discussion.
Any other questions?
Okay. Moving on to item 11, future items of consideration. 11A, consider resolution repudiating discriminatory covenants. This item comes to us. Whitefish Bay and Greendale have already taken action on this. The Milwaukee County Board took action 2 weeks ago or last week, is last week of June. So coming to you, looking for support to put this on a future agenda. And it could go to committee, JP&L, and then come out of committee, or it could go on a future board. It's I'm open either way. So this is in keeping for the resolution is in the packet. It is in keeping with removing the redlining covenant language in association with a project that's based at UWM and also in Twin Cities, I believe. If you'd like more information, that will come with our consideration.
And I requested it not go to committee, that it just come to the board.
That was my intention, but I just wanted to put it out. So I'll make a motion to consider a resolution repudiating discriminatory covenants to be scheduled at a future board meeting.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? That's usually what
I
comes
mean,
next.
no, I'm just like, do we, I just assumed you would just put it on if you wanted it on. It's your, I mean, it's your agenda, so.
All right, any discussion?
What,
Trustee
what
Stoker?
about the welcoming statement? Isn't that already on our list? Didn't we have a welcoming statement that was on a
A
list
welcoming
somewhere?
ordinance, I believe, that's still on the list somewhere.
Would it go on the bottom of the list, or does it move to the top of the list, or?
We can, since this is I'm open to the board that we can, since it's a current, we've been asked to take action on it by other stakeholders. We can put it on an upcoming agenda, either August 1st or September. But if the board feels that you're not comfortable with that, we can defer to staff, and it's a future item of consideration. It can go at the back of the list. I don't have an issue, but I will be honest that we've been asked to take part in this as a local set of actions.
I guess I'd like to see it in the context of the other things on the list before I make a vote.
Okay, you could abstain. So the motion's on the table. Other conversation, other discussion.
I'm gonna call the question.
So all those in favor of, do you need direction? Do we need to have direction of which agenda, or we would just work on it?
No, I think.
I'm
you
not
need to
hearing anything.
Provide direction on
Okay,
where the board wants to take this.
okay.
If it's
The
not-
motion on the floor is to consider a resolution repudiating discriminating covenants at a future village board meeting. So it's not going to committee.
I thought he called the question. Don't we
You
have to
did,
do
I
You're
was
just
that?
reading the motion.
I'm clarifying
Yeah,
the
we're good.
motion.
He's just reading the motion
Yep.
as second.
All right, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion carries 5-1. I have another future item for consideration based on discussion of the buy board. So to schedule a discussion of the buy board committee, including activity, process, and procedure at a future village board meeting, or perhaps committee of the whole.
Second.
Okay.
It was process.
Activity, process, and procedure. And we can get input from the scope of that discussion moving forward. All right, trustee Ursink.
Just got a future
Oh,
after
okay.
you.
Would-
Sorry.
Would there be any point to doing this until you have another meeting with the buy board?
It's for our purposes. So I heard interest from our board that they want this. And so we can coordinate with the school board because they might like to attend at the same time to participate in that. And I'd be happy, I'm sure trustee Arndorfer and I can facilitate that. Point taken. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
I'll abstain.
Abstain. So motion carries 5 in favor and 1 abstention. And then seriously, I do have one more future item consideration just based on the concern around or clarification around where the DPW site village board action lies in a staff work plan. It might not be it's not really an item of consideration, but could you bring back clarification on that? Okay. So then we don't have to take that. Trustee Ursink.
Yeah, so I'd like to move forward with discussion of ethics and code of ethics at a future JPNL meeting.
Okay. Is that a motion?
I
Make a motion to.
make a motion to discuss, I make a motion that JPNL discuss code of ethics at a future meeting.
Okay. I'll second that. So motion by trustee Ursink, seconded by President McCaig. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Any other future items? Yes, trustee Arndorfer.
I had one just picking up from our last discussion around the vote on third-party signage on public grounds. Wanted to address the ancillary and always outstanding question of holiday decorations at Water Park. Short story, I mean, I generally agree with the recommendation put forward by that said, also have constraints, including infrastructure limitations, i.e. it's not like we could come up with an amazing light display throughout the park or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that we can't consider other options. I don't think we would have sufficient time to do that for this coming holiday season, but next season seems reasonable. I might be wrong. So the motion I had I move to direct staff to evaluate options for a non-denominational approach for decorating Atwater Park for the holidays consistent with the HRC recommendation and in a manner that could be captured in the 2023 budget and executed during the 2023 holiday season, supplanting the tree. Additionally, as the village updates streetlights, identifies opportunities to update the park's electric infrastructure, potential creation of light displays.
Second.
Any discussion? I think while I have been curious about the same thing and I like that, I will not support it at this time because I'm concerned about the 2023 budget impact because that's coming up really soon. And so I'm concerned that we won't be able to do the due diligence vetting of, enough to make a decision. So I would consider it at a future date. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion carries 5-1 with McCaig, nay. Okay. Other future items? Trustee Stokebrand.
Yeah, I would like to move to have staff provide information about possibly using remaining ARPA funds to pay for the street lighting engineering study. The projected remaining balance is $284,964 that are, I believe, unassigned yet from our COVID money.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay. Motion by trustee Stokebrand. I'll let you have the second. I did second it. But
Oh, no, don't tell me.
Trustee Kudo.
You asked for the second, so I
Any-
assumed you didn't give it to yourself. I did.
Great. So we have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Obviously, this is time sensitive. Would this go to the bottom of a list?
Good question.
There's a point of
Question?
No, I'll wait.
Was this question posed to Director Manuelson and all those funds, or was it a different session?
He previously talked about the residual funds from the closing of the TID. Those were unassigned. And we decided to put those towards cash flow issues.
Right.
This is separate. I asked him to let me know where we were with the ARP funding, and I wanted to, for the sake of transparency and accountability, I asked that we have a report with the second quarter budget report about the closing of the TID district. This is a big deal in our community. It's the largest, longest TID we've ever had. And I think it's important that the residents have a full presentation. And I hope that he's afforded one at the next meeting to make a presentation about the closing of that TID and how it could affect every homeowner. I also said that I would like a public accounting of the ARPA funds that have been spent, which he provided. And he thought that he could present it with the second quarter budget report at the August meeting, which would be a good idea. I responded, and so I hope he is also afforded an opportunity to make a staff presentation.
All right. Did Trustee Baldoff ask if that money was applicable in this situation, or maybe I'm thinking of a different stream of funds there?
I recall her asking a question. I don't recall.
I
that
think she was referring to the Build Back Better, which I think is dead. I don't
Got
know
it.
that for
Yep,
sure though,
yep.
but
That's right.
that
And I
I'm
think
no
the,
expert on this.
since the motion is to direct staff, if it comes back that it can't be used, then
Fair.
it
Yeah.
seems like that's the point of the motion. The intent of the motion is to see if it can be used.
There's no scheduled review, right? This is just when we do that study, we're going to take the money from this source, correct? Is that my understanding of the
That
motion,
was the
Director?
request.
I believe we had decided that if we found the funding, we would do it sooner, but then of course the issue became staff time. But I
Okay.
think we found the money is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Noted. Trustee Ursing?
Nothing.
Okay.
I just have a question. So this isn't the first meeting where we've had discussion around items that are on lists. And I like everyone else have lists, and then obviously the village manager has list, and manager has list. But like, is there one place I can go to see where everything is on the list? Like if it's updated?
Every resident would have that same question.
Well,
Thank you for
yeah,
asking.
But this resident's gonna ask. So like, is there a place I can just go, or you can send it? Just because there might be some things that are on the list that it's like,
I think it was in a past packet just recently when talking about initiatives, right? When we had the big list of all the different initiatives.
The one tonight.
The one tonight, this is this
Listed.
one.
like that.
Those-
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. The one tonight included those that were on for 2022, the one prior, the meeting prior listed 2022 and 20.
It'd be like those, sorry,
So
I'm supposed to
I'm happy
talk into
to-
this thing.
It's not just the blurb that you saw, like there's like a spreadsheet with like,
yeah, I was asked not to provide it or to provide it in a more digestible fashion.
I'm a big eater, so I'll take the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I
so-
just, because I think that there are
Yeah.
probably things that we might want to move around or take off the list,
Well, that
most
is-
importantly.
Yeah. So let's put
I
a
j- I'd
pin
just like
in
to see it.
that.
I mean, I just want to see it, so.
Right. So it came to us, I don't think since elections though, didn't it?
No, right,
Right.
that's when the change occurred, I think I kind of relate that a little bit in the last memo that I did. We used to provide, the full, like a lot of the detail instead. I just started to bullet it
Mhm.
by different departments. So they're updated quarterly. So after we go through this review, then we'll go and update for 20.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, I only ask because there seems to be things that you know that are on the list.
Yeah.
That people
no,
don't
I'd welcome the
remember.
opportunity to share.
Yeah, that people don't remember are on the
Right,
list.
yep,
And so
absolutely.
as opposed to like me trying to bring something up in the future
Yeah.
that already
Right.
exists, I don't want to waste
Mhm.
everybody's time. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the one, I'm just gonna say, so the question is and now wait, did we? Oh, we finished future items.
No, my
No, this
motion
is the last
my
one. This is,
motion
this
on the
is part
table.
of, okay, so that's a separate question. Let's do that as because it's not related to this motion.
No.
Right. So there is a motion on the
Let's-
floor. There is a second.
Free flowing.
I think no one's trying to keep the list from you. You can get the list. But is there further discussion about this motion, which has to do with at seeing whether ARPA dollars can be used for an engineering study?
Oh, I thought we voted yes. Okay, sorry.
We have not taken a
We
vote
haven't
on that.
taken a vote yet.
Right. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries to determine that.
But the question remains, I believe, when, it's, as I said, it's time sensitive.
Mhm.
Is it going on a list or?
I think staff realizes that's the time sensitivity to these issues and they put it on accordingly. So if the ARPA funds are available for this window, they're going to look at that and they're going to put it on the list appropriately. They're not going to put it on a bottom list for 5 years from now and say, oh, that's over. So I think they understand.
I understand.
Just like
your-
if there's a weather emergency, they probably.
I think that I understand your concern and I think that we can coordinate and figure that out and communicate back as soon as possible.
But most importantly, where's the list? No, I'm just kidding.
Joking. Yes.
Good night.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
just-
we have one item. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Second, so trustee Ursink got it.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Trustee Kudo with the second. You had like a
That's
husky
fine.
voice.
That's fine.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned at 10:02. Thank you.
And Kudo, you seconded, right?
Yes.
Yep.